So good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Maybe too much. Welcome to the second Research Symposium Grand Challenge presentation. I'm Paul Teske. I'm excited to hear what you all are going to say today. We're running a little late and we have a lot to do, so I want to get started quickly. Thank you all for being here. We now have a Regent, Norbert, and our Provost, Constancio, with us. So that's exciting as well. Today, as you know, the format is 5 minutes of presentation and 5 minutes of questions. And again, we have something like 17 or 18 presentations, so we need to move fairly rapidly, but it's more time than last time with the 3-minute presentation and move on. Just on the questions, I would say, we're academics. We like to ask deep probing questions to each other and dig deeply. We don't have a ton of time for that, but we do want to have time for questions and hopefully concise, maybe comments as well as questions, clarifying, collegial, obviously. So a bunch of C's around your questions. And I'll try to keep track on that and, whether we may not have questions on some. I don't want to discourage it, but, we also don't have time for a million of them either. But looking forward to that. And with that, I'll introduce Marty Dunn, who's our research director. They'll talk a little bit more about today.
I think I can do this, right?
All right.
All right. Well, good morning. It's really great to see you. And thank you so much for joining us today. I wanted to start by just saying thank you to a few people, too. I want to especially thank Paul for taking his time and energy to help kind of curate, moderate, and kind of deal with kind of helping us organize kind of this whole activity. And there are a million things that a dean could be doing on a morning like this, and the fact that you're willing to kind of spend your time kind of helping with this is really I'm really grateful for. And I want to kind of thank Mitch Moorcraft and Zach Strober, who are literally at 12 and 3 o'clock, according to my who certainly behind the scenes kind of have made all of this and with some of their colleagues have made all of this possible. And so kind of thank you all. And then I really want to thank all of the presenters and the teams that have come together. And I mean, it sounds like, and I think I may have said this before in this venue, 5 minutes, 5 minutes of commentary, sounds like not a big deal. It's a big deal, and it's a hard to put kind of good thinking into a short, kind of accessible, crisp presentation. And I want to say, our expectations aren't that everybody has a completely polished TED Talk or something. I certainly don't. The intent is, we're sort of building kind of this enterprise as we go. And the intent today is to go from kind of where we heard a lot of kind of, I would say, individual and small kind of group ideas to start seeing how those might coalesce into kind of broader and bigger teams. And again, this is just a very early start to that kind of entire process. And the intent is to get the ideas out and collectively as a community build on them and strengthen them. And this will only strengthen, the university and our research enterprise going forward. So I really appreciate the comments that Paul made kind of about the kind of questions, and it may be even less questions and more suggestions, comments, observations about connectivity that you might see and so forth that the team might not have seen, that others may not have seen. To that end, kind of we're asking you to, we decided not to use the technology in real time to solicit feedback, but we're asking you to, as we go through, take notes, or if there's any striking observations that you have and would like to share, either publicly or perhaps offline, please do so. And we're going to, on Monday, send out kind of a recap of the session. We'll post we'll post the video of the sessions and the slides, and we'll invite that kind of feedback from the community. And so we'll have a survey that we'll make available for you, to provide kind of feedback of any kind that strengthens, again, what we're trying to do here. And so again, and you don't have to provide feedback on everything, but we're really looking kind of for kind of these connections, kind of the concepts that can be strengthened and so forth. After Monday, kind of where we're going in the next kind of week, shortly in the week after Thanksgiving, kind of we plan to release, as we mentioned, I'll say a formal request for proposals that we're going to invite teams to create and build a proposal that they would submit in the kind of mid-March timeframe. We will ask the teams to submit a letter of intent in mid-December. And the intent of that is to understand kind of where kind of some of the key thinking is kind of across the university, to help then provide the support for each of those teams to prepare their proposals and so forth going forward. And so part of that will be kind of tapping on kind of this consultancy company that's helping us kind of in our research enterprise called Lewis Burke, that we can, ask them to more focus some of their insights and resources to help each of the teams. At the same time, over that period of time, we'll be setting up some regular kind of touch points where we'll kind of meet with you and explore how you're doing as a team and what help can we provide, and what your thinking is to continually try to help kind of strengthen kind of all of the proposals. And then our hope is that we'll have a couple of proposals that'll be ready for prime time, that we'll be able to support and kick off in the spring, and probably have a handful of others that we want to continue to nurture and support when we redo this exercise next year and sort of prepare kind of for next year's event. So with that, I'm going to try to stop and make sure I don't get us further off schedule. I'm going to hand it back over kind of to Paul. And I, again, thank you, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say as well.
Thanks, Marty. So our first presentation is from Kathy Bodine's team on technologies for persons with disabilities and aging into disabilities. So Kathy, come on up. Just a couple of other logistics I failed to mention. Zach in back, at 4 minutes into your talk, will wave his hand. And then at 5 minutes, he'll wave even more aggressively, assertively. And we'll aim for that 5 minutes. Your slides will be up here. The mic is on, but you can take it off of the stand too if you want to, stroll around. And let's go. Great.
Okay, so before I start, I want to give a shout out to Jim Sandstrom, who stepped up for me a few weeks ago when I had a family emergency, and I apparently did a fantastic job. So I wanted to just say that thank you to my teammate. Okay. Yeah.
The forward click, is that not working?
Okay, I get my time back, right?
All right. Well,
there we go. Maybe.
Is there a place she should aim towards, or aim towards back there? Okay.
There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is technology, research, and innovation for aging and disability. And I want to also give a shout out to all the teammates that you're going to hear about in just a minute. So right now, there is a massive problem around the world, and that is that over 1 billion people are living with a disability and aging into a disability. We are getting old. By 2050, our population of people over the age of 65 will have grown 124%. That's 2.1 billion people around the world who will be living with disability. Okay? And so in less than 30 years, we're going to have double the issues that we have today. In this room, half of the people in this room will have a significant cognitive, physical, visual, or auditory disability before we die. So that's important. This is a grand challenge, as recognized by the World Health Organization, the CDC, the National Institutes of Health, National Science Foundation. This is a very important thing to think about. It's very expensive. So the gaps and opportunities are huge. According to Keith Cambry, as well as the AARP, top gaps are caregiver support, care coordination, aging in place, financial wellness, preventive health, and social engagement. All of these can be solved if we get together with both engineering and medicine and work. All right. So what do we want to do? We're proposing that CU become a global destination for disability and aging innovation. We'd like to combine resources that we have. For example, I have the Center on Inclusive Design and Engineering. I'm the new executive director for the Coleman Institute for Cognitive Technologies. And we have these amazing campuses in all of you, CU Denver and the Anschutz Medical Campus, as partners in this effort. We also have industry partners. And the idea is right now there are hundreds of thousands of jobs for students graduating around the United States who need to have an emphasis in design for people aging into disability. So what is our strategic advantage? I've been here 25 years. I've never wavered from working on technology for disability and aging. We know how to do user-centered design with these populations. I have a team of clinical experts that are well-versed in this, along with some engineering staff. We have massive industry partnerships I'll talk about in just a minute. We have access, by the nature of our longevity, we have access to every population that we might want to work with. And we have the ability to be an industry test bed, and we co-develop with industry on a daily basis. So who are we surrounded by? For my center, we have an international advisory council of folks who are venture capitalists, they are attorneys, they are rocket scientists, literally, they are scientists, engineers, and they are national and international. The Consumer Electronics Show is represented within this group as well. For our Coleman Institute, we also are surrounded by Google, Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, University of Kansas, etc. And here is our group who have shown up so far. Because of timing, we couldn't get everybody in the room at the same time, but these are folks, faculty and staff from within CU Denver who are interested. We also have 4 physicians, including the division head of geriatrics. We have a number of folks, history, anthropology, education. It's really a great group of faculty. And finally, we can take advantage of the projects we're already working on around aging and disability, and we can expand those. And my goal would be not just to research and develop, but to get things to the commercial marketplace, because that's what we need to do. We need to be innovative and entrepreneurial as we go forward. So what we will do is choose a selection of projects as we can get everyone in the same room for this next round. We will determine where we're going to start, but that's just a piece of it. The bigger piece is that larger community that we need to be working with. And in order to do that and to become a destination for aging technology innovation and for people with disabilities. Thank you.
I guess just raise your hand and I'll. Oh, yeah, okay, we have a mic question. Yeah. Oh, you're holding the mic. Okay. Oh, you had a question. Okay. Well, I think if you nailed it, so there were. Oh, consensus. Yeah, she's bringing it down.
This is a very visionary project, very, very ambitious, it sounds like. What kind of anchor do you see? You mentioned the Coleman Institute and a center. Is that the overall structure? How do you see the coordination piece of this, such that a complex project, as you have just outlined, would be well administered?
I think there's a reality check in something like this. It requires a massive commitment from the campus. It requires a massive commitment even out of the president's office. And it requires leadership, administrative leadership. It requires a rethinking. Yes, I have an institute. Yes, I have a center. Yes, I have a program. But it requires bringing all of those pieces together and figuring out how the cogs fit. I think that there are a tremendous number of leaders on this campus, and I think we need to be taking full advantage of that. There's a lot of business planning that needs to happen. We have a lot of external advisors that can also support this activity, and there's money out there. The money that's going into aging right now is unbelievable. 56 cents of every dollar spent on goods and services are spent by someone over 50. And there's a quote that we are not designing for that population across the board. So it's everything. I get calls from Honeywell, Qualcomm, pick one. These folks need us and they are desperate to hire our students. We just need to train them. So it's a big endeavor, very big endeavor. Yes, sir.
Given that CU Denver has the only College of Architecture and Planning, I didn't see anything related to accessibility.
Yes, aging in place was on there, and to me that is absolute. I've already contacted Carolyn Clevenger, and I'm saying, okay, we want to get to architecture because that is so. None of us want to go to a nursing home, right? We need you to be helping all of us. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Scott?
Kathy,
I'm sorry.
that's all right. I'm intrigued and interested, and that's not just because I'm getting old. But I wonder if you could give me some examples of the research challenge part. So I hear the challenge, I hear the design, I hear the audience, I hear jobs, but I'd like to understand a little bit more about the research.
Thank you. That's a great question. Part of the problem is narrowing it down. And depending on the foci that we choose as a team to pursue. One of the things that I hear so I'll give you an example. The Division of Geriatrics does 486,000 patient visits a year here in Colorado alone. They're talking to me, for example, telehealth with COVID and social isolation. Social isolation has the same mortality rate as cardiovascular incidents. So, and there were millions, and I cannot begin to tell you how much COVID money went to giving seniors tablets and cell phones this year that they can't use. And so now, that's an example of a research foci, just that whole notion of health, social isolation, all of that. And the work is happening around the world, but there's not a coherent research path, and that's what I think this team needs to put together. And also, there's so much research and there's so much engineering that needs to meld. I met with the head of spine surgery yesterday. He is so excited about this, and he's like, "Tell me what you want from us." The chancellor, the dean of the School of Medicine, they're in. They really want to see us do some things. So it's going to take work. Just the planning is going to take work. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Hey, that was a great presentation. I just moved here from Louisville, Kentucky, and it's the longevity, aging economy capital of the United States with a higher concentration of companies there than any place else. There's about 8 of them that collectively have about $100 million in revenue. And I think carving out a specific niche for this is going to be really important because we don't have that same kind of concentration of companies here. Right. So if you'd like, I'd love to introduce you to some of the leaders there. I know them all pretty well.
I would be thrilled. Great. I really would. Yeah. And you are exactly spot on. I haven't had a chance to sit down, for example, with Marty and Anthony Graves to really understand, for example, the Innovation District and how that's going to unfold. I think that's a key lodestone for this, for sure. I just need to understand more, and we all need to work together to figure that out. But I would love that. Thank you.
Great. I think we're on time. So Kathy, thanks so much. Excellent questions. Exactly the kind of thing we're talking about: connections, clarifications, etc. So thank you. Next group is I apologize if I don't pronounce his name right. Xiaozhen Ren. Is the team lead, and this is Engineering Better Medicine by Disruptive Technologies and Conceptual Revolution.
I think you pronounced my name right, Xiaojun. Thank you. It's not easy to pronounce. Yeah. So maybe I can start. So I'm Xiaojun Ren. So from chemistry department, and this is a quiz file from biology. So we represent our group to propose a Center for Epigenetic. The Center for Epigenetic is to meet the grand challenge, engineering better medicine. Our team includes members from chemistry, biology, physics, and engineering. So this year is the 20th anniversary of the human genome draft map. We finished the genome map, yet we cannot figure out how to decode it. As we know, if you with your hands point your head and touch your heart, you maybe wonder why they perform different function. However, I told you they have the same genetic DNA. So basically within our body, we have the same genetic DNA, however they perform different function. The question is why? And this question actually is the foundation for the grand challenge, engineering better medicine. So engineering better medicine includes but not limited to engineering precision medicine and cure genetic disease and mitigate the health disparities. So to meet the grand challenge of engineering better medicine, we propose a Center for Epigenetics. Epigenetics is a chemical modification of genetic materials of DNA and RNA, as well as proteins used to wrap DNA. Epigenetic is the critical factor that determines how one cell type becomes another cell type, a process of embryonic development. Immature differentiation of stem cell can mimic this process, since stem cell can differentiate into all kinds of cell types in the body. Understanding epigenetic mechanism is fundamental for engineering for epigenetic disease, epigenetic medicine, and the health epigenetic disparities. Basically, my lab discovered epigenetic mutations are the key driver of pediatric brain tumor. My lab has been collaborated with labs from UNC Chapel Hill and the Imperial College London to develop epigenetic drugs. And Dr. Chris File actually discovered valproic acid, which is the treat seizure disorders, is an epigenetic inhibitor when he was a postdoc at UPenn. Since we are minority serving institute, we will research to mitigate health disparities. So now Dr. File will introduce why Center for Epigenetics align with the university strategic plan.
Thanks, Xiaojun. So Dr. Ren has assembled, as he said, a multidisciplinary team that spans biology, chemistry, physics. We have computational scientists that will assist us in our research. And importantly, all of these researchers are located on this campus. We see an opportunity here. There are many labs that individually work on epigenetics, but there is no formal center for epigenetics in the state of Colorado. So University of Colorado Denver could become a center for that. And I'm not going to read the rest of this because I'm getting the hand wave up there, but I'm going to let Dr. Ren finish up. We think that our combination of expertise and our ability to train graduate students and undergraduates would really give this center the prominence that it deserves.
I have 10 minutes, so maybe I need a bit over time. So this is the last slide. So we were building an international, well-recognized epigenetic research center. We'll work as a team to apply UO1 grants and multiple PR1 grants from NIH. We will also work as a team to apply NSF grants. The complementary expertise from different groups will put us at a very, very unique position to compete large grants, like billions of dollars. We will also work with we'll ask for additional hiring on the direction of a soft matter. So we are building epigenetic training center for foster the next generation of innovators and creators for Denver, Colorado, and the USA. We believe education and research are organic body. Research empowers students' abilities to create and innovate new technologies and new knowledges for American. Students can push the boundary of knowledges and technologies. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Questions, comments? So raise your hand and we'll get the mic to you. Give you a minute. Again, Provost.
Thank you for presenting on an area I have absolutely no idea about, but it sounds fascinating. So the research component and all of these, the center will be coordinating different pieces of this research. Can you kind of help me understand what exactly that's going to be like? Because it looks like a multifaceted aspect of this, and I'm a linguist. I don't know anything about it.
So of course, you are right. I think Provost, the epigenetic is quite a frontier. Actually, it's linked with the disease, linked with aging, so linked with health disparities. So basically, as we know, we have the similar genetic. What we different in terms of disease and health disparity environment is linked with epigenetics. So it's very frontier. Actually, the good thing is we are the leader. I think we can claim. I can claim. So which means for us, we organize this center as to try to track bigger grants. So right now I have R1, I have millions dollars. Right? So for my purpose is to try to, can we get 5 million dollars, right? Like U grants, and multiply R1 grants like 2 or 3 million, one grants. That's the purpose. So when I sit at NIH panel, I sit at U grants. Basically, if you look, all the people is half MIT, Berkeley. I'm the only one from Denver. So I want to build in here. I have so many collaborators, but I want to have my experience and building here from here to bring the university to next level in terms of research. That's the purpose. This is research center.
Thank you. Other questions? Marty?
Thank you. That was fantastic. And I think I get a little bit the research, the science, and the education piece. And I'm curious, is there potential for creation of intellectual property and commercialization and so forth?
That's a very, very great idea. So frankly, a few years ago, we do have like a very, very good technology. And actually, the Hishumi paper from MIT, after 1 year, they commercialize and publish in Science. And we published 1 year early in GBC. Of course, it's the best year to represent the field advance. Right? But if we have the ability, if we have the center, we will try to push it to that directions. And can we commercialize the technology we develop, particularly in the single molecular technology that another team member is here, Jeff. Right? So we do, I think, in terms of single molecular parts, particularly in living cell single molecular tracking, we are, in my field, actually, I'm number one, the first one to publish the paper. Yeah.
And I'll just add that my lab has recently filed disclosure on something that is being reviewed by the folks out at Anschutz that we hope to patent that is related to this work.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Great presentation. Next up is Jaban Kamtia from the School of Business, and the topic is the transformation of health systems.
I'll just take 1 minute. This is health, so pardon me. Yeah. Okay, we are taking on health. Our objective is transformation of health systems. And I'm representing 20 plus faculty and few research fellows and students in this endeavor. We have formed Health Administration Research Consortium. People call it HARC, HARC, depending on who you ask. Our objective is research and insights into transformation of health systems. And we met in the last 1 year around 10 times to exactly define what we are supposed to be doing. So the 4 areas that we have identified are over here: the business and strategies, the equity and diversity, digital and intelligent health, and leadership. Many people ask me, what do you mean by health systems? And Marty is the biggest question maker about that. Health systems are defined by the business systems, in the United States who provide you healthcare. So Kaiser is a health system. However, the definition doesn't only limit to that. It can be a community health system, it can be a public health system, it can be a national health system. We don't have an international health system, God forbid if that is a feasibility in someday. Therefore, the scope of this expands from policy to public, expands internationally, expands markets, expands institutions, and so on and so forth. The most important thing is this thinking of systems thinking. I don't know how much you are aware of that. Systems thinking is this continuous feedback loop that should feed into the system so that we know what exactly we are doing. So if it is COVID today, we need to reshape certain things. If tomorrow it is malaria, we need to do certain things. Day after tomorrow it's epigenetics. Yes, we'll be moving more towards personalized healthcare and so on and so forth. We have identified several research areas under these. I'll not go through the details of that right now. One thing I must present here is the strategic advantage, and to us the strategic advantage over something. So we scanned the local market, as I can say, and where we lead in this and how it is a differentiator. So all these universities have some or other footprints over there in terms of some or other activities going around health. I'm excluding ANSUS and the public health, School of Public Health, other universities and business schools and so on and so forth. I think we stand out quite significantly because we have a 20+ year experience in providing a excellent health administration program. We have 30+ faculty now. Some of them recently joined and wrote me after the November 5th presentation, and so on and so forth. So as you can see, these numbers talk about why we should be in this field, and we are already sort of initiator leader in this field, and we need to expand more. With that strategic advantage, I looked at how we are aligning to CU Denver, and I found I think we are present in all these 5 areas. This is undoubtedly grand challenge. If you don't believe me or university, then ask United Nations, ask WHO. They all agree that this is an identified grand challenge. We will feed into this open innovation systems because we are talking to Hinge Health, Teladoc, and so on and so forth. And I think we have on the list of around 30 different startups and companies. One of me and my colleagues wrote a paper on the sustainability of doctors and their clinics around the COVID system. So we are already there in terms of how we are fostering entrepreneurship and innovation in these areas. Our starting point was 2020, when COVID was hit significantly, and we did this inaugural health systems climate study to identify where we stand and what we need to do. And that bled into the research objectives that we put forward. We plan to continue this every year. I'm just putting it a number that involves a 60,000-70,000 expense over a number of years. We have incubated 20+ projects. The ones in the blue are actually the new ones identified after November 5th. The other 11 or 12 of them are ongoing. Some of them are already hitting the journals. And as you can see, it expands those 4 areas as well as the global. Some of these are cross area wise projects. We are there almost most significant areas, as I can call it. These are the faculty who are already involved. Yeah, it'll be a little bit injustice to cover them up within this short time. We are present in all these areas. In short, our mission is transformation of systems. We come together from various fields with lots of expertise and lots of experience, and that's the beauty of it. I have Wayne Casio, an emeritus faculty who is expert in diversity and equity areas. I have somebody who is in data and analytics and trying to expand those areas. Our current impact, these numbers speak about themselves. I'm a little bit colorblind, so I can make up some of these colors up to you. I don't know where to focus on this. At this point of time, I would like to invite Roland Stacy, our Health Administration Program Director, who has been crucial to bring support, incubate it in the business school, and Scott Dawson, our dean, who is not present here, he has been also crucial. Roland told me that the sponsorship had increased from 50,000 to 80,000 in the last 2 days since I have sent these slides. So we are on the job, and I'll ask Roland after this. Where do we stand? I think last 1.5 years of experience has been significant. We have made our impact. We are on the roll. We are doing good activities. Industry leaders are looking at us. Alumni, students are looking at us. We want to establish, I don't know what is the difference between center and institute or how that is exactly, but in my view, it should be Health Administration Research Institute or Health Systems Research Institute, something of that sort. Expansion from Denver to global, very dynamic, vibrant, comprehensive group. We want to expand to newer domains such as design. Support, well, we need a lot of it, a lot of it. I'd like Roland to add a few things.
Javon asked me to just talk about some of the funding. I'm getting a hand in the back, so I'll be very fast. Since we started this the first of the year, we have received $80,000 in funding from industry and alumni. We intend to continue that with 3 separate groups: an industry group, a specific alumni group that will be CEOs and counterparts throughout the country, and then all of our alumni. We've got 2,000 alumni who have never been approached for any kind of funding, and with those 3, we expect to be able to support this with at least 6 figures a year indefinitely. That's our goal.
Yeah, $2,200 per head. I'll pause here and any questions?
Thank you. Open for questions or comments? The provost maybe has an up. Here's our other mic. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm here to understand, so I will ask all the questions I need to, right? So what you do essentially is collect information about health systems and diffuse that information, or what else do you do under this banner?
Yes, we do a lot more things.
Yeah, that's what started the process last spring, but we've engaged many in the just the last few years. Last few months. I got back last week from the International Hospital Federation meeting in Barcelona, and from that meeting, we've connected with University in Finland. Already have data received. We are well on our way. If you look down on the global, the evaluating the financial impact of COVID-19 on world private hospitals is a much bigger deal than what that looks like there. That's in partnership with the World Health Organization, their chief researcher in Amsterdam, and us on what the private hospitals faced as opposed to public hospitals worldwide. There's a lot of research that's going on specifically through HARC that is going to be groundbreaking. We're very excited about it.
We touch upon the nerves where it pains the most and ask them to change it. So we just wrote a paper on digital orientation. And trust me, 60% of these hospitals and health systems are way below the curve compared to retail and other areas. My personal experience when it comes to diversity and equity, whenever I go to a hospital, oh, you're an Indian, so you have JARD. And they took a year to find out that's not a cause for me at all. And they tell me you're vegetarian, so I'm strictly non-vegetarian, so on and so forth. This is embedded in health system as on today. And for the last so many decades, we have been talking about diversity, equity in health system, and they are treating patients from all areas, but it's not diverse. It's very homogeneous. We have touched that point, and yesterday I received 2 emails from Canadian hospitals asking us, can you interview us on these issues as well? We believe we are doing better. So these are some things which probably not just collecting information, and he has been a CEO. Sometimes when we talk, there are some deep structure issues that probably nobody will touch because either bipartisan or biased, and we don't want to touch that issue. That's where we come into picture. Yes, Matt.
Hey, quick question. Fantastic presentation, vision, etc. Is there any advantage to our close partnership with the Anschutz campus and the programming there, for example, School of Public Health or anything?
We think so, and we're trying to do everything we can to expand that. And the faculty list that you saw earlier is a broad range. It's much beyond just the business school. Yeah, how many 20 plus from more than just the business school. And so we hope so, and we're reaching those connections right now and want to be able to expand that.
We have faculty from School of Public Affairs. Number of faculty have approached from ANSUS to join. Our assets are limited right now. I didn't want to really promise them anything until I know I can feed them. That's to be honest. And I have not fed anything to our 20 plus faculty so far. So yes, the support will go a long way because we have raised their expectations and promises. There will be enough spillover effects. The CIO is in our board. The CIO and both CMIO or ANSUS are in our executive board. So we do connect quite significantly.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Excellent.
Thank you very much.
I also want to note that Ruan Stacy has his PhD from the School of Public Affairs, so we're very proud of our alum coming back to the university. Next up is Jeremy Namath from the College of Architecture and Planning, and the topic is health in place in an era of climate change.
Should I bring this over?
Hi, I'm Jeremy Namath. I am a professor of urban and regional planning at the University of Colorado Denver in the College of Architecture and Planning, and I'm here to talk about the initiative entitled Place-Based Collaboration for Health in the Face of Climate Change. So here we are. Although we're a team of 20 or so, our speakers will be Carrie Makarowitz, who's an associate professor of urban and regional planning, and Julia Mahfouz, who's an assistant professor of education and human development. So the world is facing an onslaught of threats to the health and well-being of our communities, many of which stem from long-standing challenges related to poverty and inequality, institutional racism, and rampant global urbanization. But all of these have been exacerbated by the devastating impacts of human-induced climate change. These intersecting threats to health, which is a term we use to mean the complete physical, emotional, and social well-being of individuals and groups, are not only being felt in the developing world, they're increasingly felt right here in Colorado. And unsurprisingly, those bearing the brunt of these impacts are our most vulnerable neighbors. Place matters, and our health and well-being are shaped more by where we live, work, and play than almost any other factor. Our grand challenge then is to figure out how we might work together to use collaborative, community-based methods to reduce or ultimately prevent place-based health inequities related to climate migration, labor exploitation, extreme weather events, rising infrastructure costs, and so much more that are due to a changing global climate. We believe CU Denver is prepared to confront this challenge head on, as Carrie will now explain. I'm sorry, as Julia will now explain.
So our team alone has around 20 researchers working on these issues across 5 different colleges and a dozen different departments on issues necessary such as gentrification, environmental change, poverty-related policies, K-12 well-being, sea level rise. And here are the different colleges and departments represented, and we invite others to join on this initiative as we believe that all disciplines and all communities could be part of this. So now, although we're doing a lot of work in these areas, there are 2 big gaps that remain. One is that wicked problems require interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary solutions, and the university is not set up for that or that way. And the traditional research has not adequately engaged communities.
So we propose a community-oriented center for interdisciplinary research partnerships. The center will organize and fund projects and community members through participatory action research focused on solutions. This is a simple but powerful model used by universities throughout the world. It democratizes data and pairs diverse university resources with equally diverse community members and organizations. The research also benefits from goodwill, real-world learning for students, and the opportunity to create meaningful change for residents. Further, results are felt immediately, and the effects are lasting and transformative because the model creates more imaginative solutions that work for more people. And the center starts with a strong foundation. Our team members already have dozens of partnerships throughout the city, region, state, national, and internationally. The center would also start with, sorry about that. The type of community-rooted center is also perfectly suited to and supported by CU Denver. Our newly adopted strategic plan and mission target this type of research. Many of our students are from families and neighborhoods that experience these inequalities. The vast disparities in our region and our state are representative of the country and world. And the campus has long-standing partnerships and is in a region known for collaboration and discovery. To solve these issues, we focus on people through the lens of households in which they manage their lives. And these are just a sample of the potential projects in 4 major areas. Some projects will be focused on rising costs from climate change, such as those for housing, utilities, and food. But reducing costs is not enough. We must also address household income and wealth by supporting workers and creating wealth-creating opportunities through localized systems. Other projects would directly improve physical and mental health by monitoring and improving air quality through big data and citizen scientists, by creating activities for youth, and through improving urban nature systems and guaranteeing viable food production. Finally, projects would not only create and expand opportunities, but ensure that community members have the rights, privileges, and permissions to access them by ending discrimination, improving P-12 education systems, fostering innovations in climate-responsive industries, including multimodal transportation, and by expanding local amenities without causing displacement. In terms of collaborators and funding sources, we believe these types of research projects are highly fundable by government agencies at the city level, also at the state level. There are a lot of national foundations that many of us already apply to and receive grants from, as well as a lot of large national research organizations in several areas: health, physical and social sciences, environment and geography, and economic development. Our initially proposed timeline is about 18 months until we can have some initial preliminary findings, at which time we would be able to apply for more grants.
So to conclude, let's talk about how we might measure success of this initiative. First, we're committed to fostering long-term collaborations with those suffering most from the health impacts of a changing climate. In sum, this center will help develop homegrown, place-based policies and programs that improve the lives of our least well-off. In the process, we'll publish internationally recognized research demonstrating the core mission of our urban public research university, while also training generations of students and community members to become leaders in solving real-world problems with real-world solutions. This will ultimately help us fulfill our strategic vision of CU Denver becoming a true university for life and a university for all. Thanks.
Thank you. Excellent. So are there questions? In addition to probably the provost has a question. What comment? Somebody give, oh, we've got one up there. Yeah. Chris?
Hi, that was great. I just want to point out that while our specific ways of approaching these problems are very different, the epigenetics proposal versus yours, they are related overall because changes in epigenetics are generally environmentally induced. It's not just mutations in DNA, for example, but exposure to different environments can cause epigenetic changes leading to differences in health outcome and so on. So I think there's more in common with our groups than one might see initially. I just wanted to point that out.
Awesome.
Person on all of this is Priyanka. But she did a lot of work on air pollution and how that genetic codes and things like that, and pests.
Great presentation. Just building on the comment there. I know one thing epigenetics looks at as well. Some of this is generational trauma and how it manifests in terms of health conditions later on. So with our new HSI and PZ designations, there might be some opportunities to carve out some space specifically in that as it relates to this region that could be really interesting.
Excellent. Other comments? Albert?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to offer City Center as another way of connecting to city, state, community. You have a long list, but just wanted to be helpful as well, supportive.
Cool. Constancio, do you have a question or not on this one?
Well, yes. I am seeing all these connections that are already being highlighted, and I'm wondering, do you see any meetings that will be going on after this to see how you might team up in some way to connect your ideas? Because that's really part of what this activity is also about.
Yeah, just looking at the run of the show, the Excel that was sent out, reading the titles and what was about, I was already about a lot of overlap. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the trick is sort of, for us, was trying to find, that balance between big ideas that are all encompassing and broad, but that have something that makes us unique as a university. And I think that's where that sort of, Boulder might have a focus on climate change, but I think we can do our work differently. That's something that pulls a lot of us together, and makes us unique and fits with who we are and why we're all here, not at another university. So that's where I'm looking into.
Great. Cool. Well, great questions, great answers. Thank you so much. Next up is Diana Tombeck from CLAS and another climate slice on climate change, human, and ecosystem health.
Thank you, and I'm going to ask for your indulgence here because I have 4 very fundable projects to report, and this may go over the 5-minute limit, so Dean Dunn is aware of this. So our proposal is a Colorado Global Change Studies initiative, and I need to point out we're not sure whether this should be a think tank, a center, or an initiative, but what it is a platform for catalyzing multidisciplinary collaborations, and already we're off to a roaring start here. So I just want to remind people about global change and the drivers and impacts of global change in Colorado. So the major drivers are climate change. With climate change, we have unprecedented wildfires. We still have the Kruger Rock fire burning this late in the season is unbelievable. Drought, water shortages, impacts on wildlife, and then on the human side, we have population growth as a driver. We see this in the Front Range in particular, affecting urbanization, infrastructure, social impacts, pollution. And I need to point out that these 2 drivers intersect, affecting human health, and we've heard a lot about that here, and sustainability of our natural environment. And you can see that in the bottom, I've depicted the natural world impacting the human enterprise and vice versa. All right, so we have, as a concept, attracted already 19 plus team members. I say plus because folks that keep contacting me and we haven't formalized their participation. And these are across schools and colleges, arts and sciences, architecture and planning, arts and media, public affairs, engineering. And these initial discussions have generated 4 robust research proposals, research projects that can convert to proposals fairly easily. So let me go through these really fast. Smoke and the implications, wildfires, transport, pollution, human health. The point of contact is Jan Mandel from math in CLAS. Climate change generating regional and local impacts in terms of water, hydrology. In other words, precipitation, stream flow, hydrology. The point of contact is Ann Chin from CLAS Geography, Environmental Sciences. 3, forest conversion and fostered adaptation. That basically means change or elimination of forests, and fostered adaptation refers to artificial support out there, or our support to get our forests back, our natural ecosystems back. Point of contact is Mark Swackhammer for architecture and planning. Organismal level effects of climate change. In other words, what's happening out there to our plants and animals? Are they needing to adapt? Is there any evidence of that? And the point of contact is Carlos Infante. And then there are broader impacts we'll get to later by Joanne Brennan and Susan Stirrup. All right, let's talk a little bit about the smoke project. And the point of contact here is Jan Mandel. Obviously, global change with climate change is creating very different patterns on the landscape, resulting in extreme drought and fire. And fire is generating smoke. And smoke has multiple impacts, air, health, socioeconomic, environmental. And the question becomes, what can we do about it? So what we can do ranges from technology development, so monitoring, sensor networks, but also application pre-fire to reduce the severity, post-fire, impact analysis, modeling, et cetera. And there's room for outreach and education, community education here as well. All right, so the team is 8 faculty members from different schools and colleges, and funding sources have already been identified. They are from NASA, NSF, CU Presidential Initiative, National Cancer Institute, and possibly NOAA. We have gaps in our team. We could use atmospheric science and meteorology, climate science, societal aspects. So if there anyone out there, anyone who can do jump in, please do. All right, quickly, this is the climate change at the local and regional level relating to hydrology. The point of contact is Ann Chen. The other team members are Troy Butler and Allison Goodwell. And we have pictures here of the Grizzly Creek fire disaster, where as a result of that fire, which is around Glenwood Canyon, last summer we saw incredible debris flows and mud flows closing I-70 with impacts on riparian vegetation and streams. We also, let me just back up quickly, the graphics on the right show population growth in the Front Range from 1973 to 1992, which has been pretty impressive. So this team has several research questions that have to do with predictability, connectivity, causality. I'm not going to go into detail, but one of them has to do with extreme climate extremes and predicting this, and also compound events, complex events that arise from a natural occurrence. So they've identified potential funding sources already from NSF, primarily involving computational and data-enabled science to macro systems and biology. All right, the next project, forest conversion and fostered adaptation. You heard from Mark Slackhammer about this at the first forum, but this is expanded and developed. The main point here is that forest regeneration since 2000 has not been occurring. And we need to document this more, study this more, and then go in and intervene. And one product already from this research is 3D printed nurse pods that can be used to help seedlings grow, because seedling survival has not been very good. All right, team members. There are 5 team members, and we have already identified potential sources of funding: NSF macro systems in environmental biology, USDA Forest Service. Let me point out that in the infrastructure bill that just passed, there are hundreds of millions of dollars to the U.S. Forest Service for forest regeneration and infrastructure for regeneration that we might be able to tap into. EPA, Joint Fire Sciences Program, et cetera. Okay, organism level effects of global change. So bear with me for just a moment. So as a result of global change and climate change in particular, we see changes to the environment and available habitats. And that means organisms are perturbed in terms of where they live, their migration patterns, what we call phenology, that means timing of events. And the question is, will this exert extreme selection pressure for adaptation? Can they adapt over time to these things? So there's a depiction here in terms of the graphics. So we have the historical conditions where organisms match their environment, and then we have global change, where we have a shift and organisms don't match, and the consequences are twofold. One, they will adapt, and can we track this? Or 2, they can't adapt and will go extinct. So we have some specific goals, such as monitoring genetic diversity. And let me point out this idea of biobanking genetic samples to provide records of historical genetic diversity has had great applications. You've probably read about Elizabeth Ann, the cloned black-footed ferret. She came from a biobanked tissue sample from a few years ago. There is a funding program just announced by NSF that this team can apply to. It's organismal response to climate change. It was just announced last month. It's absolutely perfect. So our team is led by Carlos Infante. These folks have abilities in genomics and RNA transcriptomes. And finally, NSF requires a section on broader impacts always, and we've got broader impacts that are generally useful anyhow. Joanne Brennan has said art can translate our scientific discoveries and applied field work into creative works that reach broader public audiences. And Susan Stirrup from engineering says that science education can utilize issues and discoveries to create course modules and build activities for students in STEM. So anyhow, that's it. You can see that our short time for collaboration has been highly productive, and we look forward to additional brainstorming and research projects that are fundable. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Diana. We have time for maybe a question or so, comment. Constancio, is the mic coming?
It's not so much a question as just acknowledging that you've already reached out and different teams are already part of your group, and that's wonderful. I think that's the kind of recognition of collaborative pieces that help you to tie the idea together, and I really appreciate it. I just wanted to make that comment to you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's
There's
quite
lots of enthusiasm for this. Thank you.
quite a big group. Thank you. Next up, also a different cut on the environment, monitoring the environment for health and safety. Ron Rohrer and leading that team.
Oh, not everybody's coming up. Selena's going to substitute in for advisor JJ. You know how professors are. So we have a few people up here, most of them not here today. Oh, wrong way. All right, so one of the things that what we're interested in, we're mostly engineering, one chemist, physics. We're interested in sensors to address some of these issues, right? So if you look at this, one of the things, so this is kind of a picture out of a recent publication about wildfires. So if you look at wildfires, and if you've lived in Colorado for any length of time, especially in the last 2 years, there have been 2 fatalities just up the road from us, like 285, where wildfires have occurred and the people have called and said, do I need to evacuate my house? And the local police department said no. An hour or 2 later, the fire ripped through their area and killed them. So what a lot of people are starting to talk about is sensors out in the environment, the millions of acres out here in the West, right? And some of these things, some of these sensors, if they're in a wildlife area, can't be powered, right? They need to be passive and they need to, like, for example, there's earthquake sensors that when the earth shakes, they activate, right? So there's sensors like that. Other ones that they're talking about we're talking about activating by drone or other aircraft. When there's a fire event, it's like when they're dropping the water, you go through and you actually activate the sensor. It's sitting there in passive mode till you activate it. And then either low powered or not ones, and then kind of inverted it. And other ones are ones like on houses, right? So I have a place up in the mountains, which I'm going to retire to. Marty hopes sooner than later, but anyway. So one of the things up there is that they do with Wi-Fi is they actually will run it between houses. They'll actually do it Wi-Fi across the valleys without actually going through the fiber optics or things like that. All right, and so environmental sensors to sense things like beetle kill pine and things like that. One of our guys that can't be here today is Fernando. He talked about this last time on power grid monitoring. So there's 2 things with power grids. Power grids, one, are affected by disasters, but they also, as we're familiar from California the last year, they actually create disasters. So there's one thing on monitoring them. Another big thing is actually monitoring methane, right? Methane, a lot of places are outlawing gas and things like that in your house for furnaces and things. So the gas pipelines that go for miles, those are one things to monitor for pollution and other things. Like he was saying, natural disasters, and this kind of goes both ways on this. All right, building sensors. This one's great. I got this out of the New York Times. I know we can't believe the Times, but let's get past that. Parents are actually sending their kids to school with portable CO2 monitors. So the kid walks around with the CO2 monitor in their backpack, unbeknownst to the school supervisors, right? And then they come home and usually mom or dad downloads the data. And what you can see here, CO2 is a surrogate in a sense for the coronavirus, right? So it's not monitoring the coronavirus or measuring it. It's measuring the more CO2 that builds up in a room like this, the more you're susceptible to being exposed to the coronavirus. They also use other gas molecules for this. And what you can see here, 800 parts per million CO2 is considered the max that you really want, that the room's not really well ventilated. And you can see for this particular case, one, you get it past it in a couple times during the day, but the big spike is at lunch, right? When everyone's at lunch.
Another sensor that we're looking at is individual health sensors. So we're thinking about a contact lens that can tell you if your diabetic level is high. So diabetes, as you guys might know, affects many, many people. So about over 400 million people worldwide, and 1 in 10 people in the US have diabetes. So being able to monitor it without being invasive is really important. So a finger prick method or just having a continuous glucose monitoring sensor on your body is very invasive. So a contact lens can change color in response to elevated glucose levels. So that will be able to, so if someone's looking at you or if you look in the mirror, you'll be able to see if the contact lens changes. That will tell you that you have increased levels of glucose and you might want to get treatment for that.
The other one of our professors, Mark Garkowski, works in electromagnetic sensing and things. And there's also these things called sensors where they're sensors of opportunity. So for example, Mark's work is not completely centered on, but one of the things that it does, it takes advantage of the EMP pulse from a lightning strike. So it's actually not being powered necessarily from other things. You actually sense due to the lightning strike doing the EMP pulse around the country, or around the world, sorry, not the country. And then the other thing is active radar and LiDAR, you know. I did skip one. One of our guys, Zukun Ra, who's in the back, was supposed to come up. He told me to skip this one. But these are how you network sensors, right? Mesh things. And so Ilkun, you know, so here's some things here where we're talking about, you know, how are you going to the internet? You know, there's things like mesh networks where you actually are bouncing between different radios and things like that. So I think we're probably good on time, so we'll make up for Diana. So that's one of the things. This is a big data thing. Farnoosh on, I think, every other thing out there. He's there he is. He's talking to us too, right? Big data, a lot of data to process here. And so we kind of just answered the questions as any self-respecting engineer would, not embedded in the program. So here's our people that are working with us currently. And we have talked to other groups. And so, you know, what's the extent of it? We're basically only have currently a partial coverage of the research area, right? We actually got this together when the announcement for this came out. The gaps, the system integration, custom sensor development, and drone and ground vehicles, you know. How do we propose to fill the gaps? Enticing other faculty like everybody else here, as well as, and Marty, this came from Mark Elkowski, the Associate Dean, hiring someone else, not me. Potential funding sources, the city, state, local government, as well as federal agencies. We actually had a big project with CU Boulder funded by the DoD where they were looking at underground things, you know, with autonomous vehicles. What would the success be? A team of researchers and a track record that was from Mark too. A flexible system capable of rapid deployment or, you know, getting the data. And we see this kind of as a center.
Okay.
That's it.
Thanks.
Any questions?
Thanks, Ron.
Any questions from anyone other than Constancio? No.
I'll just note it seems like there might be some good ties to the smart city work that I think John Tolva and others are going to talk about. It's awesome. Okay, Constancio, did you have a question or?
He doesn't have to answer.
He doesn't have to have one on everyone. You answered them all.
We're good?
Okay, thanks so much. Okay. This is one of the reasons it reminds me of how wonderful it is to be at a university, all these things you are interested in but don't know much about that you get to learn a little bit about. It's awesome. Next up is Theo Edmonds, and he's with a group talking about Futurist Leadership Institute, or think tank dedicated to a foundation of culturally responsive analytics. Theo.
Yeah, we'll try to break that down just a little bit. So I'm the Associate Dean for Research and Innovation at the College of Arts and Media. And I want to start today with a quote from the contemporary philosopher Prince in the opening lyrics to his Batman album when he said, "I've seen the future and it will be, I've seen the future and it works." But even more recently, great voices of the people like Rihanna remind us that we cannot master the future if we are slaves to the past. And so now I invite you to imagine with our team what a future would be like if it worked for all. Logic is part of it, as we've heard this morning, but there are multiple destinations, so A to B may not be the right framework. You see, one size does not now, probably never did fit all. And so our collective imagination is what will help us get to the future. And you know, let's face it, the evidence is in. Most Americans appreciate the paycheck, but believe that the experience of work sucks. It's a national issue that federal government agencies have said are threatening America's position on the world stage. And, you know, here's the pain points that we have to solve, and there's the same for both people and organizations. The typical American worker is spending more hours at the workplace than they are in any other part of their waking lives. 65% of American workers are disengaged at work. That's a $450 billion a year lost revenue cost, not to mention the decline in mental health. And then there's this. Black & Decker CEO put it this week this way. I think there's a generational aspect to it, and it's very, very real for us executives. The millennials in particular, and I think Gen Z will be even more so, they're voting with their feet. If you don't have a commitment to social responsibility, and it's believable, if you're not passionate about innovation and really making things happen, and if you don't have an authentic commitment to true diversity and inclusion, and oh, by the way, if you can't inspire them, he said, your workforce doesn't care. But you see, the news is not all bad. Over the last 100 years or so, about every decade, we had 2 years to the average life expectancy. And so kids that were born in 2007 are estimated to live over 100 years old, but here's the rub. If you're going to live longer, you're going to be working longer, right? And so work may actually become more like a tour of duty. You may even retire 2 or 3 times and work in different industries. And so a 100-year-old industrial model that is learn, work, retire may not be the best map for us to go forward as we change the experience in the future of work. The well-being, productivity, and prosperity of individuals are at the core of economies and companies. No firm will prosper for long if it is damaging the social fabric around it. And not making creativity a priority is important too. 88% of the Fortune 500 firms that have failed in the last 60 years have done so because there is a demonstrable time point, a milestone, when they did not use creativity when they had the opportunity. You know, the World Economic Forum's Future Job Reports puts it this way: while businesses and economies have extensive systems to account for monetary assets, there is an alarming lag in establishing the value of human skills and capabilities. Our group takes a Our group takes a social ecological approach to the workplace, and our group's research points to a handful of strategies that, if implemented, can help organizations of all kinds change the experience of work. It's things like reimagining CSR, ESG, and community engagement. Reimagining the role of managers. Gallup points out that the manager has the single most important influence on a company's culture than any other role. And when we think about ERGs, making them non-exploitive, and the culture change management and innovation have got to be aligned. We plan to solve these pain points with 3 cures: a cultural analytics and data hub. The data could be monetized in the future to self-fund advanced research in the future of work. A research-driven venture studio that would use arts and media, humanities approaches, and aligned sciences. And we see this as being something that is not just for tenure and tenure track, but also for IRC and students to participate in as well. And professional training and education programs funded by companies who would be focused on providing early and mid-stage career BIPOC, LGBT, and women professionals with the high growth, high demand projects, skill sets that are important in the future of work. We already have a place in the unique value proposition validated within the NSF and many times after that is capable of measuring our impact, and in partnership with Penn State's Cognitive Neuroscience Creativity Lab are planning one of the largest data sets to ever be collected that will measure the relationship between cultural well-being, creativity, and innovation, and more importantly, how people's identities mediates that relationship across all STEAM plus business plus human services. We see this being a consortium model that would be also an opportunity for us to stake out some claim on social mobility of Pell-eligible populations, graduation through retirement. And then finally, we have our partnerships already in place. BOMA, founded by Laura Stein, who created TEDx, has already signed on as a partner in our summit. We are planning the data collection to begin in the first quarter, with a project for the venture studio to begin in the third quarter of this year, leading into the end of the year where we could host our first MVP for companies as they think about how to retrain their workforce. So with that, I'll end and open it up for questions. Tracy Sitzman at the School of Business is my co-lead for this project. And within our work, we have anthropologists, we have business folks, we have economists, we have educators, we have a lot of people that you don't normally see at the table together already working on this issue.
Excellent. Thanks, Theo. Questions, comments?
Now, finally, something I could understand too. This is fascinating, and I just want to say that, normally when we talk about research, we tend to look at engineering and all of these other areas, which is wonderful. But this angle that you bring to our, research, the innovation, the culture, the, all of the aspects that we need to be thinking of as human beings, for heaven's sake, this is a refreshing way of looking at research and creativity as well. That's the only comment I want to make, and I applaud the team that you've assembled for us to be considering this as an area of focus for CU Denver. How appropriate, considering what we've put in our strategic plan. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say thank you so far. We're almost halfway through to the folks that have presented, for being on time, for being concise, great questions, great comments. And we'll move forward. And next up is the aforementioned John Tolva, who I know is a smart cities expert. So I assume there's going to be aspects of that involved. Thanks, John.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hello. Hi, my name is John Tolva. I'm a scholar in residence here at CU Denver, focusing on smart cities and urban technology. I'm leading a team investigating bias embedded in the systems that mediate our urban lives. If you weren't at the last one, and maybe even if you were, because I went through it in 3 minutes, let me just quickly define algorithmic bias. Networked machinery, like you see on the left there, shapes our urban lives. Like brick and mortar architecture, the shaping can be subtle, often unrealized consciously. But living in a world, as we do, where physical infrastructure, like on the left, is increasingly festooned, I mean, that's obviously an extreme example, but festooned with devices for capture and processing of data about how the urban environment is being used, can be a very good thing. It helps us manage resources, it can help us prevent illness, and generally increase the livability of our public spaces. But it also means that there's an enormous amount of data being generated about the urban environment, and that data needs to be processed with the help of human-created algorithms. And because humans make decisions based on bias, consciously and unconsciously, our algorithms necessarily reflect that. And so here are some examples of algorithmic bias. A first kind of bias comes from the lack of diversity of people working in machine learning and AI itself. This relative monoculture of worldviews and belief systems becomes codified, sometimes quite subtly, in the systems that they develop. A second kind of bias, actually, hang on just a second. Oops, did I skip past that? Yeah. A second kind of bias, often predictive AI is based on data that itself is flawed by bias. In this case, a sample set that over-indexed people of color. One more example for you is that often predictive artificial intelligence is based on data that comes from practices that are themselves flawed or worse. This is about data that's generated by the policing practices in New York City. So it's not that the data itself is bad, but the practices that give rise to them. But there's another challenge, and this is where it moves into the world of public policy, is that the responsibility for enforcing equitable use of technology and data in urban spaces often falls disproportionately on government, typically an institution lacking the skills to make sense of complex data sets and the algorithms that act on it. So the grand challenge that we propose is this: how can we anticipate, prevent, and mitigate human bias in the design and deployment of machine learning algorithms, especially those that mediate our urban environment? We've put together a pretty amazing team. There's Farnoosh again. He's the Where's Waldo of project teams. Let's see here. The team that we've assembled represents a kind of broad transdisciplinary set of skills required for such a complicated, consequential challenge. Farnoosh anchors us in computer science and a commitment to ethical machine learning methods. Troy Butler brings statistical rigor in the field of uncertainty quantification, which is a term I learned and love. Certainly, uncertainty is a hallmark of the system of systems that is urban life. Mark Golkowski from electrical engineering is our route into the hardware side of urban systems. So it's not just software, it's the Internet of Things. In addition, as Associate Dean of Education and Student Success, he can help us make sure that our work ultimately benefits our student body. Meng Lee, who you saw in the HARC presentation, or as part of the team there from Health and Behavioral Sciences, has done great work on understanding human irrationality and the bias that flows from the field of healthcare. And then Patricia Valverde from CU Anschutz and the Latino Research and Policy Center is our expert on community engagement and testing, in addition to myself. Got a sneak preview of the adjacent teams. You know, if I could have edited this in real time as I was sitting up there listening, I would have, because there's at least 2 other projects that I've just learned about that should be on this slide. But Theo, who you just saw, obvious intersection with his work and culturally responsive data. What you haven't seen yet is Farnoosh's presentation on infrastructure informatics. There's just a lot of synergy between these projects, and we look forward to working with them. Some open areas, gaps, if you will, or opportunities. Let's call them opportunities for collaboration. The first is urban planning and design expertise, understanding the physical built environment, the physical built envelope, and how these also can have consequences or the implications of data and bias in data on those systems is important. But I also think we need representation and perspective from municipal governments and the private sector. The private sector being the vendors to government that have a vested interest in getting out ahead of the curve. Potential funding sources and external partnership. The National Science Foundation actually has a fairness in artificial intelligence grant that we hope will be continued next year. That remains to be seen. Another partnership opportunity, but also a route into funding, is a nonprofit that's now located at the university called the Colorado Smart Cities Alliance that actually runs pilot projects between the private sector and Colorado cities. We're very tightly aligned with them. Regent Chavez has been part of that since the very beginning, and I think represents a lot of opportunity for getting our hands on the real data generated by cities. So what's success? In our opinion, it's the development of an actionable rubric, playbook, and or testing environment for software developers and government to use to eliminate bias as early in the design process as possible. A secondary goal here would be to use this work as the foundation of an urban science institute at CU Denver based on human-centered, community-responsive principles. I think you have to start at this very, very low level of fairness and equity in order to build the sort of urban science locus that we really want to have here at CU Denver. Timeline, very quickly. We think that we can validate data collection and software development best practices, basically a review of the literature, what's been done. There actually has been some great work done at MIT, start out on this by the second quarter. It is a dream of mine, and I think the computer scientists that we're working with, you know, testing environments for software flag all kinds of errors all the time. You know, you made a mistake there, that's not going to compile there. Is it possible? One research question here is it possible for those same environments to flag areas where there's a high probability of human uncertainty, bias, sort of getting in the way of the mathematical rigor of the algorithm itself? So we'll explore that. What we'd very much like, and working with SPA and others, is to create a playbook for engagement of diverse user constituencies throughout the process. People have to be involved. The end users, the city dwellers, the people whose lives these algorithms affect at the crosswalk, in the autonomous vehicle, or anywhere else. We'd like to establish user guidelines by the beginning of next year for city staff. So this is where the government comes into play. Non-technical staff that have a rubric for, you know, basically walking through the areas where bias may creep into how they're running their systems. And then lastly, assembling policy templates for public, human-readable documentation on algorithms used in the public sphere. The public should be able to read these like anything else in an open data portal. So if you're interested in joining the team, there's my contact information. Thanks for your time.
Awesome, John. Thank you. questions for John? There's one up there from Larry.
Thank you. Yeah, bravo, John. I was fortunate to be at the Jake Jabb Center when the Smart Cities Initiative was announced and celebrated. And what you've presented today and what I know on the surface about smart cities, I'm hearing and seeing some connections between the planners in architecture and possibly creative placemaking. And Theo brings a real exciting area project proposal called Creative Place Healing. And I was wondering, just is smart cities, have you had or seen any connections between those that might be emerging from today's presentations?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the work that Jeremy presented and Theo, I don't want to get too hung up on the term smart cities. We've been thinking about and actually developing best practices for what makes people want to live in a city for like 3,000 years. What's changed is that we have so to speak, a new building material, and that is data and technology. It's really only accelerated some of the patterns, good and bad, that we've seen in placemaking for the last several centuries. And so I want to account for that, right? There's bias in the physical world, and what I'm suggesting here is not that we sort of rewrite the playbook on what makes a good place, a happy place, a safe place, but being mindful about the ways that we may screw that up if we're not attentive to the data that mediates that space, that allows us to cross that crosswalk, or permits us into a space at all because of surveillance, for instance.
Great. Thanks so much, John. Okay, next up is the Building Democratic Communities group, and this is a large group that I know SPA has been at the center of, that I'm happy with, but it has built out. And today's presenters include Annie Miller, Sarah Field, and Chris Weibel.
All right. Can you all hear me? I'll talk louder. No, I'm kidding. Democracy is under siege. Our collective hope for building democratic communities is the realization of capacity and tools for achieving solutions to grand challenges together. Challenges that we've heard about today, like racial and income inequality, health disparities, climate change, and perpetual violence. This is how we create a collective impact that is simply greater than just the sum of our parts. We're big, y'all. No. We are already interdisciplinary, translational, diverse, and intersectional. We all build upon established research relationships here, but we're making lots of space every day for innovative and emergent collaboration to build democratic communities. All forms of contribution are welcome. Bring any time, energy, or effort you have. We have a history already established of grant writing, local, state, national, and global partnerships, and exceptional national recognition for our work in this area. This group already has millions of dollars in external funding, hundreds of journal articles, and dozens of books related to democratic communities. And yet our interests are expansive, and you're welcome to find your place with us. We are all potential energy waiting for the inertia of this room to engage together. We see our potential collaborations as natural places to start, but this is not an inclusive list yet, because we don't know what all you want to do to build democratic communities. First, we see a place to start in equitable and just energy transitions, social justice and grassroots movements to enhance community resilience, increasing our skills and capacity to make public decisions through democratic processes, that might influence our classroom skills, our community practice skills, and hopefully enhance the efficacy of our institutions. Here we think about combating misinformation. Ooh, that's a loose N up there, sorry. Harassment in online communities and ways to prevent violence. And finally, addressing the challenges of the interdependence of our governance systems.
I'm Jody's understudy, so I can't handle both slides, script, and everything else. Building democratic communities requires a radical respect for difference. To that end, we will facilitate internal collaboration that enhances our interdisciplinary network of researchers with a focus on democracy across a range of relevant topics. We will cultivate democratic skill sets and mindsets with our students and ourselves. We will focus on communication, teamwork, and leadership. We will build the trust necessary for democratic work within the university, among community partners, and between societal institutions. We will provide a trusted public forum for democratic engagement aimed at helping communities develop the skills, spaces, and capacities to solve wicked, grand, complex challenges across urban and rural, national, and international contexts. All of these impacts align with and actively support the 2030 strategic plan. Our collective impact will only be achieved if we have the necessary resources. We need to make cluster appointments across units. We need funding to support our student researchers. We need a director to facilitate our work together. We need dedicated spaces to come together socially and to hold the events we intend. We need support for trainings and capacity building workshops with each other. And lastly, we need time to fail. Time to experiment, time to speculate, time to collaborate. We need this time especially for our IRC, our tenure track faculty, and our students. Trust building and time are at the heart of our activities listed here. We begin our journey by spending time together learning each other's languages, translating among our specialties and disciplines and interests. Then, in year 2 and 3, we develop the infrastructure for this collaborative through space, shared knowledge construction, and enmeshed public comments and commitments. Our activities include a combination of inward-looking work that focuses on democratic processes in our classrooms and in the university, and outward-facing work that focuses on becoming a trusted facilitator of challenging conversations in our city, our state, and our country, as well as internationally. The Academy could be a responsible steward for democracy. We could impact the fate of our society through working collaboratively with each other and with communities to build democracy. We encourage you to join this effort for a greater impact. We each have a stake, we each have a vision, and we each have a contribution to make. This is a big circle, and we would like to see it get even bigger. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Great presentation. Questions, comments? Santiago, do you have some comments or no?
Well, I just, I don't have a question per se, but this is a broad group, and coordination is going to be so critical. So I understand the need for a director and everything else that you are asking. But the ultimate goal is what? What is the ultimate goal that you are pursuing?
Yeah, there's actually multiple goals, but the big goal is to make Denver, CU Denver, basically the center of these discussions in the country and internationally. So all roads come through here. And for us also to benefit the communities we work with, change this university. We have a big group of scholars here that are interested in democratizing higher education and democratizing science. And so we see this spanning from our classrooms to local communities, international communities, but really giving this campus gravity. Nothing in the Rocky Mountain region has anything like this. And this is the biggest movement this campus has probably seen among 40 faculty and 14 units. And I think people here are just committed to the whole idea of it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Next up, Yosef Bonaparte from the School of Business, the 360 review of the state of Colorado.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Dean Tasky. Thank you, Provost Kokas. I'm honored to be here today and talk about our Colorado 360 project. I didn't spend enough time to recruit, but we already have two, and then there's a third person who's going to join us. My name is Yosef Bonaparte, and I'm the Director for External Affairs. And I have a company, Bonaparte Investment Group. I have a $420 billion asset management, one of my clients. So the reason I mentioned that, because I want to talk a lot about the state of Colorado and how we can make a change in this state. The importance of 360 of Colorado is to identify the problems. If the vision of this symposium is to see what are the problems here, the first order of business is to do 360 review, to see the environmental, the health, infrastructure, etc. The second thing that I'm going to focus on it. Without the 360 review, we solve a problem, but we don't know if these problems are the most important problems. The 360 will help us. The second thing is inform voters. We cannot have informed voters when it's 24/7 media, social network, people talk good things about the person, bad things. How you can identify your vote and be informed voter if we cannot, if you rely on the media and social media. So we need to develop a mechanism that you can be informed voter. I don't blame voters who are uninformed. I am uninformed. I don't know what their people doing, because I have a lot of information, and the cost to gather information is huge. Therefore, we need to solve this problem, and we will solve this problem in 360 review. I can tell you, our governor, Polish, if he's good or not, I can give you one number. He started his term when Colorado was top 11. Now Colorado this year, top 12. I didn't know with the 20 after COVID what's going on. So as of now, Colorado -1. So I give you one number. So you, as an informed voter, I give you 5 seconds. I can make you an informed voter in 5 seconds. This is a problem. We can solve it. So the team expertise, we have a very good depth in faculty education, especially, and we believe human capital is the medical, because we need to invest a lot in education, and we have a very depth in education. Julia here, and Laura's not here, and Kent is here. So we're building capabilities. I was busy in conferences. I met the CEO of Starbucks, so I didn't want to miss in these opportunities. But in the next few weeks, I can build more capabilities and bring more people to the table. Now I'm going to talk about, so our team already have some partnerships, so we already have some experience in this field. So now I'm going to talk about what exactly the 360 review. We're going to go across sectors. Here are the sectors: education, healthcare, infrastructure, etc. Cities. We're going to go city by city. That's amazing. So we can map the problems in every city. And then we're going to work with minorities. Everybody say the minorities are doing good or not. No, we need a number. Are we doing good or not? You're up or down. So we can get that. Again, we need information, deliver information in 10 seconds so that people can make decisions, because there's an infinite amount of information. So can we quantify that in a number? Methodology, and I'm not going to talk about that. This is important. In 2019, I did the 360 review because my daughter was a little bit sick and I want to support her. My way of supporting her was doing 360 about Colorado. When I did the research, I was not aware that Colorado, a lot of people commit suicide in Colorado, teenagers. I sent this report to all the senators and congressmen in Colorado. All of them said, oh, 2,000 people die or commit suicide, 2,500 or 20,000, I forgot the number. Please listen to this. So they think this is normal, what's happening here. But when I told them that Colorado is in the bottom 3 in the nation, we raise $20 million from the state funds. And we saved life. We saved life by telling the state we're not doing good and so commit suicide. We are in the bottom three. When we said bottom three, the governor allocated $20 to $40 million to support high schools, and we saved life. So the 360 saved life. That's what we're going to do here. For example, when you say Coloradans, what do you think about environmental? They think we're good. We're not good. We're 51. We're in the bottom. When we talk about energy, we're the best. No, we're not best. And I know Senator Hansen, who's working in energy. So we're not good. So we do the ranking system to analyze what we're doing. And also I created an index for Colorado minority every year. We can say where are the minorities, what are their problems. I can give you a number. They're better off or worse off in 5 seconds, done. So this is what we're gonna do, something to ease informed voters. The report will do policy recommendation, enhance democracy. Here's example that I want everybody here to know that our big enemy in Colorado, state of Colorado after COVID, our biggest enemy, Austin, Texas, Austin and Dallas. San Francisco is falling apart. A lot of businesses are moving. Charles Schwab moved their headquarters here, but because Austin, Texas and Dallas has a competitive advantage over us, they moved their headquarters to Dallas. Apple, they want to do some Silicon Valley here. They moved to Austin, Dallas. Why? Because the corporate tax is near zero. So the 360 review will help how to compete with Austin and Dallas. We're losing $10 billion of business because we're not competitive, because we have a corporate tax in Colorado. So for example, I'm working with Senator Hansen to raise money and lower the corporate tax so we can bring Apple here, Charles Schwab here. But how to do that? So we're trying to do a crypto bond because there's a laws here, TAPR laws. So we're trying to work. The 360 review also will review who are our competitors, which is Austin, Dallas, and how Boulder and Denver can beat Dallas, Austin. The outcome of the 360 review, I'll be done in a minute or two. Sorry about that. We're gonna do a center called 360 Centerado think tank center, Colorado, Centerado, and we're gonna have a business community. Policymakers already talked with the governor, with the senator and representative. They would be happy to join us. She's actually from School of Spa, Iman Odi. Probably you know her. She mentioned your name. Senator Chris Hansen, and he's in Israel. He's going to Israel this weekend, and he's going to join us. Business community. As I said, I have a company. The asset management of my clients, $420 billion. So I can ask them to join us. We're going to have a media, and we have some person here from the media. Media is critical for us because if we can do the best 360 review, if I say push this bottom, everybody's better off. But if there is no media to tell the people go push this bottom, then we did nothing. You do all these beautiful things, but nobody know about it. So we need media on our side. Academics. Academics is the easiest part. We are here. This community is here. Anytime I can email the provost, the deans, or other my colleague. Hey, can you join us? Can you help us here? So this one, I'm very happy that we are there. Needs and challenging. The need we need is, we're almost done with academics need. Probably we need 1 graduate students, 1 undergraduate students to help us with the project. And the challenges is delivery, as I said, media approaching the community, tell the community in the places where you can reach out to them, tell them about our product and how we can be informed voters, and we can talk with the business community to help us with that. Budget and external funding. If I get the seat, I have already the 360 review for 2019. I need to do the 21 after COVID. And a lot of community who are vulnerable community, we need to see what they're doing. I think if we get the seat, we can do the 21, then we can have support from the from students and media. External fund, we're gonna have from state support. I'll talk with senators and business community. Again, I mentioned that I know some there. Goals and success, here's the outcome. Our goal is to have a think tank. And we're gonna have an annual report with the Colorado caucus every year. We're gonna say, here guys, we are here today, we're going, last year we were there. We can map where we improve or we did not improve. And the timeline, if we get the support from you guys in September, sometime in spring, sometimes March or April, if I get the green light, I will give you the Colorado 360 review 2021. I can map all the problems that we have post-COVID, what are the communities are hurt most. And in the fall 2020, we're going to have our first caucus. I'm going to invite the governor. I'm going to invite business community and tell them, here's what we are this year. Here are the challenges. Here's what we need to work. So this is doable. Not a lot of money I need. We have the context. We have the infrastructure. It's really doable. I hope we get the support. I think I'm done.
Great. Thanks, Yosef. Questions, comments for Yosef's idea?
I don't need a microphone. I've been here 30 years. I think we should raise the corporate tax. I've been here 30 years. I think we should raise the corporate tax so less people move here.
This is a great question. Fantastic. Every policy has a winners and losers. So you have to identify what's your priorities. I spoke with the senator. I told him we need to lower the corporate tax, to raise businesses, to bring good businesses that we want. For example, Tesla. I have a contact with Tesla. I want Tesla to do it here, their manufacture. But because we have a corporate tax, we have this problem. Again, every policy, winners and losers, we have to identify. The 360 will tell us what should be our priorities. Again, we bring more businesses, infrastructure is going to go down, it's going to hurt our infrastructure. The housing market is going up. For example, we see in Boulder, because the crypto is moving to Boulder, the housing market in Boulder is expensive. So yes, every policy winners and losers. Yes.
Anna?
Yeah, I'm just curious whether you're going to use indices that have been peer reviewed and already published and accepted in the business world, or you're going to develop your own relevant indices for measuring different, like education in different cities, or success at business, it's economics, etc.
This is a great question, and this is the advantage of this project. I didn't need to develop indexes. I just will utilize what's available to make our ranking and to make our recommendation. That's a fantastic. I forgot to mention that. Folks, I didn't need technology. I didn't need this. Everything is available online. I just need to put them all in one mixer and I give you the cocktail. And I say, here is the cocktail, apple martini. That's it. If you want to, I can tell you, Form 4 is not going to happen unless we do this. We quantify all of the information in one number, up or down. Thank you. That's a great question.
Great. Excellent. Thanks, Yosef.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Provost.
You want to use that?
So I just listened to a presentation on algorithmic bias and all of these biases. So how are you addressing that in your data and, you know, in the one number that you're going to spit out? How do you square out the biased presentation? I'm just curious.
Thank you very much. This is a wonderful question about the bias and how we can do the ranking, and which is aligned with her question. We're going to use U.S. news. It's very non-biased. By most people think it's not biased. So we're going to use their numbers to build our ranking. And then there is dispute. There is no dispute across the nation that the U.S. news is biased toward one group. As I said, if as of today we have the election, Colorado -1 since the governor joined office. Yeah, he's doing a great job, highways and this, but if anybody who is going to be a governor is going to do highways and building and this. The question, are we up or down? So we're not biased. I didn't think we were biased. And then we can do robust sensitivity analysis. This is one of the expertise we do it in finance, sensitivity analysis, so we can see how much the measurement error of our results. But that's a wonderful question. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Yosef.
Thank you.
Okay, we're about 2 hours in. Everybody that's here, thank you for staying and listening. We have about 7 or 8 more presentations, so we're going to continue forward. If you need to, get a drink or use the restrooms, obviously, please do that. Kent and Julie are next, and their topic is connecting and building human, social, and physical infrastructure for healthy communities. A lot of words on the way over here. Kent was telling me he sees this sort of as, they're connected to K-12, and a lot of these topics we've been talking about are ultimately going to need a connection to K-12. So it's kind of a cross-cutting notion here, I think. Thanks, Kent.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to see a lot of you here. We've been talking to many of you over the last 2 weeks, and that's why we've sort of pivoted our presentation a bit from what we did a couple of weeks ago. We want to make a pitch to you all that P12 education is a really essential piece of most, if not all, of these grand challenges. And if you're wondering how to connect out, we want to let you know that there's a center for that. We already have an established institution in the School of Education and Human Development that was designed particularly in 2014 with a mission of the Dean Rebecca Cantor at the time to be an outward-facing, proactive, consistent, reliable partner around the state to bring research and technical expertise to daily problems of practice. So we've got lots of great faculty-driven, grant-driven kinds of projects. Of course, you'll hear from a couple of our SEHD colleagues shortly. But this idea of how do we reach out and have partners drive the work was really behind this. And we've adapted a lot of principles and ideas from the medical field, translational research, as well as nursing. Center for Practice Engaged Education Research, we intentionally borrowed the practice engaged from the nursing field, as well as trying to get to that PEER acronym for that representation of the balanced work that we want to do with partners. I'm Kent Seidel. I am an associate professor in the research evaluation methods at the School of Education and Human Development and founding co-director of CPEER.
Julie Axenford O'Brien, also the co-director of CPEER. And in my other life, I'm the executive director of assessment and program improvement for the School of Education and Human Development.
So on with the P12 pitch. We'd like to make the case that any of these grand challenges requires partnerships with existing organizations outside of the university, or they're not going to be successful. We bring a lot of that connection already figured out, not just the connections themselves across the state with districts, professional organizations, Colorado Department of Education, but also how to do that really well. We've been honing our skills for the last 7 years. Practical measurement expertise, really good ways to match evidence to drive innovation, improvement, implementation studies, along with the design, and ways to support partners in this type of work. Problem identifications, we think P12 is really important because they're kind of a canary in the coal mine. They're central institutions to pretty much any community, right? I mean, this is the central place where all the families and children are. A necessary component of a lot of the solutions. We've seen schools need to step up in COVID, for example, to deal with health and housing, as well as connectivity kinds of issues. Solutions. We've got a number of ways that we think are really important. Connecting with the curriculum, right? We've got rural partners that the forest idea from an earlier presentation, Mark Swackheimer's, connect that in with secondary graduation opportunities and capstones, for example, as well as just the day-to-day research and helping to maintain that work as P12 embraces the grand challenges. These folks are also the future of this work, right? These students are going to be the folks that come in. There are students that you're talking about preparing for this kind of work. They're going to be a big portion of sustainability of any change that we make. We bring a number of things to the table. I'm not going to read the whole slide to you, but and I'm sorry that the template's a little hard to read. But again, that research infrastructure and like I said, established connections, but not just that, established learning communities. So we're building capacity both with our own students and faculty, but in outreach in professional learning to existing school leaders, teachers, and state officials around Colorado. So kind of 2 points of infusing this kind of work. So how we can help, we've got 4 points here that we just want to throw out there as examples. I've taken the liberty and asked permission for most of putting a few of the grand challenges that we've already heard about up here, just to give you some examples of the types of things that we're talking about.
And I'll just, as you're reading this, I guess I want to talk about this conducting collaborative, partner-engaged research to really go after so many of the challenges that you all have been speaking to. It's not the university doing to, but doing with the various stakeholders that we're trying to engage in solving these challenges. And I think that one thing that we would love to be a part of bringing to the table beyond just the connection to P12 is this methodology of applied and partnered research. And there's some differences from traditional research methodology when you really engage partners as not just the beneficiaries, but participants in and designers of the work that you do.
Thank you. And I would add to that, it expands the capacity of your work because you're not having to do everything for the partners that are out there. You're building their capacity to continue to do the work with you. Here's my example ideas. Sorry about that. And I need to head out. I apologize. We've been double booked, not by our choice.
And I'm going to tell you where he's going because it's completely relevant. He's taking a bit of research that we did in the spring where we surveyed teachers across rural districts and large suburban districts in Colorado and piloted some items about teacher well-being, teacher perception of their students' well-being, and how they were managing during the experience of the pandemic last year. That data is some of the freshest we have in the K-12 setting on the quality and status of our workforce, which, like other workforce spaces, is experiencing really traumatic responses, right? Teachers resigning, classrooms, schools being canceled and switched to online because there's not enough people to even be in front of the students that are in front of them. So Kent is now presenting that research to an organization called AC, the Association of Colorado Education Evaluators, which is made up of folks who are in leadership roles of research, assessment, and accountability in districts across the state, as they're crafting some response to some upcoming proposed legislation related to how are we adjusting our accountability system in ways that respond to the changing context of K-12 and the K-12 workforce. So that's why he had to leave, to go engage in some meaningful application of immediate research that we did a few months ago into the K-12 education leadership setting and policy setting. So I just had to say, that's the kind of stuff we think needs to be embedded in this grand challenge work. And we hope that we can bring the K-12, PK-12 environment and this kind of methodology that's about rapid response to evolving situations to how we engage in this grand challenge research work. So that's, he had to leave, sorry.
Thank you,
but I'll try to answer questions.
Thanks, Julie. Questions for Julie?
I have a really quick question. What I'm hearing kind of across the board are different big grand challenges, which are all really phenomenal in their content and their application. But the one thing that I'm also seeing is shared methodologies and recognizing that PAR, I know that Jeremy Namath just left, right? But participatory action research is the type of research methodology that you're also doing, which is similar to what Thea will be doing with co-design and co-creation. And so I would just say that there's an additional conversation that we could share methodologies across these different projects, and they get amplified that way too, through that innovative process.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. I think there's a whole methodological conversation and thread that literally we could become an innovator in. And I will tell you, from the K-12, PK-12 environment, this is an innovative way of approaching research. And so I would welcome the opportunity to look at across different schools and colleges and how they've approached similar research challenges.
Great comment. Great, thank you, Julie and Kat.
Sorry.
And I would just say, I think we're doing what the provost hoped we'd be doing. I mean, ultimately for this year, there may only be 2 or 3 specific projects that we can fund, but all the connections, all the conversations about methodology, about ideas is awesome. And I think something very exciting for CU Denver. So thank you all. Next up, Geeta Verma and her team for augmenting students' lived experience through mentoring for college and career success.
All right. Oh, did you walk away the thing? Thank you and good morning. I'm presenting from phase 1 and the title has shifted a little bit. And what I'm going to be talking about is lived experiences, but augmenting those through mentoring experiences. So I am Geeta Verma. I'm a professor in the School of Education and Human Development. And I have with me, where's Ashish? All right, so I have with me Mariam and her team. They have been working on this mentoring project that we're going to talk about and figuring out a way for these teams to collaborate so we can make the projects that are happening in the university much more applicable for our students' success. Okay, so the grand challenge here is lack of equitable success opportunities for students. In the high school, in college, we know that it has been established. We have institutional barriers, and I talked about this in my previous presentation, barriers of students being judged with their GPA, with their college credits and all of those pieces, and not recognizing where our students come from. And that leads to the graduation problem. So if you look at the data, 1/3 of the students in the college never finish their degree, even after being in college for 6 years. This is a universal problem. And for minoritized students, it's much higher. So how do we solve this problem? I also want to let you know that after the first presentation, these are the potential community partners at Anschutz and CU Denver that reached out that actually want to adopt LiveDex in their program. So we have the Patient Navigator Training Collaborative, and then we have these other colleagues that have reached out that they want to look at LiveDex and hopefully even in collaboration with Miriam's project, be able to do this. So the gap and the opportunity. I talked about this earlier also, valuing the whole student, meeting where our students are. I also call it democratizing experiences. We value certain experiences, we don't value others. How do we actually solve this problem? And LiveDex, the platform, actually does that. So let me give you a little bit background about the platform. The platform is already deployed. We actually have paid contracts with 4 schools already. We have filed a patent for the algorithm that we're using. So it's already in play. The research component that I'll share with you comes out of promise of AI and data science and ethics of AI. And the exciting thing about is creating this sense of belonging with the mentoring piece that we can actually provide to our students so that we create this inclusive, welcoming space for our students. So fill in the gap. When I conceptualized LiveDex, I thought of this as a learning ecosystem, an ecosystem where students can understand where they're coming from, they can earn micro-credentials based on the experiences, they can convert those micro-credentials into college credit, and they can actually feel that they have a place where they belong because we are welcoming with their lived experiences. So what we would like to do is we have the platform deployed, but I would like to build these other features, which is the mentoring feature and content feature. So it becomes an ecosystem of learning. So we need funding, hiring for both groups. Mariam's team is in the process of, they have an NSF-funded project. They're in the process of developing a prototype, so we would appreciate support for these projects. So this is since we are already in the field, and so I want to kind of go over this research component of this project. So we assign micro-credentials for students' lived experiences. And what we are doing is, right now we're using the bag of word model, and I'm not going to take much time talking about it, but what we would like to see is we bring the next release that includes deep learning-based classification model, including clever data augmentation strategies. So let me show you the other slide. So this is it connects very well with the presentation being done in the algorithmic bias. So we've been looking at our algorithm and seeing whether what kind of biases we have built into the system. Because one of the team, John's team, talk about bad data. So one of the things we are very proud of, we're not using existing data. We're actually using data that we have collected. It provides a limitation because the data is limited, but we can actually take care of that with some of these strategies with data augmentation and all that. In the algorithmic fairness assessment, we found out, and I'm sharing this, but the things that I want to talk about is, we found out that students who achieved as white achieved a CSP, which is conditional statistical parity, of a number that is higher for this category of credentials we were assigning, which is working with others, whereas students who identify as Black or African American achieved a CSP of 0.0368. So that was the bias that was getting built into the algorithm. And so we are trying to get ahead of the problem through this research and find ways to kind of not fix it, but minimize it as much as possible. We are early in the project, so I think we can take care of that. And since we have already filed for patents, what the feedback we're receiving is that the patent is designed to protect IP based on this kind of work we're doing. And the patent attorney is very confident that we will receive the intellectual property protection. So I want to now move into the layered partnership program that Mariam's team has been doing. And she has another presentation. She's going to talk about it. So I'm going to just kind of touch upon it. So they have been funded by the NSF team, and they have been doing this work. And they figured out a way for students to participate both as protege and mentors. And that allows for students to, again, have this sense of belonging that we want to have and feel that they can succeed in the programs they are part of. They have done some data collection, and what they found out that the participation in the layered mentoring program actually helps students in certain ways. Mariam pointed it out that it's not statistically significant, but they are beginning to see some differences. So success markers and funding, how do we know we are successful? We actually would like this to be adopted beyond CU Denver. That's one of my parameters is, if we want to value people's lived experiences, we shouldn't be limited to CU Denver. It should be at other educational institutions as well. The grant funding, we can go for NSF because we are already doing AI work based on students' lived experiences, which is very subjective, and trying to figure out ways to manifest that kind of methodology. I think there are opportunities. I personally, for LivedX, is very interested in angel and venture funding as well. And I think we've been lining up this project to present it to investors so that we can actually raise some funds. So thank you very much. And I will take any questions at this time.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
Yes.
So to be clear, you're not just talking of credit for prior learning. You're talking of something beyond that, right?
Yes. So the credit for prior learning is kind of encompassed in this project. So we have been working with one school where they're doing workshops for various topics that are essential life skills, which could be communication, collaboration, academic professional skills. And they have their students attend this workshop, but the students get nothing out of it. We're partnering with them so that the students, the school district is designing. So the platform allows you to create this like a canvas shell where school district can say, we will have our students attend a workshop for 3 hours, and then they'll do some reflection experience in LiveDex, and the combination of those will assign them a college credit, because we have 7 college credits that students can earn through the SEHD. So the model is you can do LiveDex reflection pieces only and earn college credit, or you can do combination and earn college credit. So it's a very flexible model, and we're working with individuals through institutions to modify it, and that's why I think the tech development funding would be very helpful.
Excellent. Good question. Thank you very much. Oh, Marty, I'm sorry.
Matt.
Thank you. Fascinating. In the credentialing piece, is the data from which you're extracting these experiences, is that the reflection piece that the student writes, or is there something beyond that? I understand the attendance of a seminar piece, but
yes. So the credentialing piece is the reflection piece, and we have 5 prompts that have been developed by experts from social emotional learning field, and these prompts are very universal, and they can be like applicable in any discipline. And then in response to the prompts gets created a narrative, and that gets coded by the AI to assign the micro-credentials.
Got it. Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Geeta. Continuing with the education-related themes, Heather Johnson is the team lead for institutional change in undergraduate STEM for a quantitatively literate citizenry.
Thank you for sticking around for the presentations later in this session. We are excited to share with you our pitch. And since we only had 5 minutes, we decided that I would lead the presentation, but my colleagues Troy Butler and David Mays are here, and they are going to answer all of your questions that come at the end. So we think that a community can come together to change a system, and we bring stakeholders from across the university, from the School of Education and Human Development, the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, the College of Engineering, Design and Computing, and also the Office of Academic Achievement. And so the problem we invite you to consider is this. Our democracy needs a quantitatively literate citizenry to critically interpret the data and algorithms that permeate our society. And the titles of the books in this image that you see here speak to this. Algorithms of oppression, weapons of math destruction, data versus democracy. These resources are part of a collection that was curated by our very own Auraria Library on algorithmic bias. So shout out Shay, thank you. To give a sense of what we mean by quantitative literacy, I'd like you to take a look at this graph from the XKCD webcomic. The graph shows trends for 5 different Google searches, and along the bottom of the graph are months of the year beginning in May 2019 through April 2020. And so take a step back for a moment. When you looked at this graph, where did you look? Did you look in the middle? Did you look along the bottom or the side? What did you notice? What did you wonder? For example, what do you think is being measured on the vertical axis? These kinds of questions get at the heart of quantitative literacy, which students have chances to learn in STEM, but too many students leave STEM programs and degrees. So what do we know about why? Well, 1, STEM has a gender problem. The authors of this study found that women were 1.5 times more likely to leave the STEM pipeline after calculus than compared with men. A potential culprit? lack of mathematical confidence. We also know that problems with STEM extend beyond gender. Black and Latinx students are underrepresented in STEM. The authors of this article, their findings come from a synthesis of 50 recent articles looking at factors that impact students' continuation in STEM programs, of college students. We also know that these inequities are baked into the system. They're racialized and they're structural. And that means it's not enough that students just get a chance to be in a STEM course. They need to feel like they belong there, each and every one. And for that to happen, STEM has got to evolve. So this leads us to our grand challenge. For CU Denver to achieve our goal to become an equity-serving institution, we need to examine STEM at a structural level. And so what we are offering are some action steps and as well as some good news. One of the pieces of good news is that there are already projects across campus, across STEM departments in different colleges that are addressing this issue. These projects are funded by the National Science Foundation and the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, and there are more funds and more funders to be able to do this work. And so, if we decide to go with this grand challenge, we offer 4 action steps that could happen within the next year. And so the first action step is a task force. To develop a task force that has key stakeholders across departments and colleges. Next, some document analysis. We want to take a look at what's existing, what are things that are impacting students' retention and recruitment in STEM programs. So what are the courses that we have with high failure rates? We already know some of those, and also what are degrees that might have strings of prerequisites that can impede students' progress? We also want to talk to folks. With focus group interviews with faculty and students, we want to find out what are the needs, what are the issues, what are the supports, what do faculty and students think that success counts in STEM? What does that mean? And then we want to take those recommendations, take what we've learned to have recommendations that can go forward going forth, which could serve as seeds for future funding. And so we'd love to have more partners in this, and we welcome your questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. Great, crisp presentation, and I know Troy and David are ready for your questions or comments. Here's one. Gita?
Thank you, Heather. So my question is that we are so embedded and entrenched in our work in STEM fields, because I'm a STEM faculty as well. What's the incentive for people to move out of those silos and change their disciplines so that it's more inclusive to students rather than serving the STEM fields? Because that's what has happened in the past. And we need to have a really hard conversation across institutions for us to even come to the table, because if we don't have that agreement, we can do what we want to do, but we won't solve this problem.
David, do you want to speak to that as lead of the Entice grant?
All right. Hey, Gita, thanks very much. That's a good question, because we have a lot of incumbent faculty, and most of us have been trained to replicate the kind of training that we got. So we are training people to become professors. Most of us won't get there. So what I would suggest is we're aiming for a tipping point. So the Entice program stands for engineering is not neutral, transforming instruction through collaboration and engagement. So what we're going for there is the idea that what we do depends on the context. And although the science itself may be abstract, the application is always in a cultural context. So that's one key piece. The other key piece is that we have to make this work for real faculty working at a real R1 institution where we're all stressed out about getting grants and publishing papers. And I think that's probably one of the major reasons that all this work over the last 20 or 30 years hasn't taken off yet. We have to make this work for real people. So I think this effort, plus the substantial track record by the Inclusive Pedagogy Academy, is going to get us to a point where maybe it's 50%, but there's some tipping point where STEM faculty believe this is the right way to do things. This is the proper way to do things. And I'm going to be left behind if I insist on doing things the old way. So ask us again in 10 years how it all went.
Thank you.
Great question, great answer. Diana has one.
Thank you. I understand your application, your interest in STEM. I would just point out that the issue about quantitative literacy goes far beyond STEM, and it may well be at the heart of some of the problems we have societally right now. And I would like to see that question applied more broadly, actually, in terms of what would help our students, our undergrads, become, regardless of whatever major they pick, become better citizens of our society. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good cross-cutting comment. Thank you, Diana. Well, thank you, team. Excellent presentation. Next up, again, Miriam Darbaheshti and her team. I don't have a title on this one, so you'll have to see that on the slides. Enhancing student success through multi-layered mentorship program. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Well, my name is still Mariam Darbaheshti. I'm here with my colleagues, Tom Altman and Gita Verma, and we'll be talking about enhancing student success through a multi-layered mentorship program. So after the first Grand Challenge Symposium, we formed a group of interested colleagues from College of Engineering, Design and Computing, School of Education and Human Development, College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, and our colleagues from Office of Undergraduate Research and Creative Activities and Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So our team has focused on our big challenge. So many things to, yes. The grand challenge that we face is how to create an equitable environment for all students, regardless of their differences, so that the students feel a sense of belonging to their program, their school or college, and their university. So here we see that the gap that already exists in this higher education system, the lack of equitable community support for underrepresented students that leads and results to higher dropout rates. So this is a well-known challenge that people have actually tried to solve this and come with solutions in different ways. You saw this picture earlier today. Our proposed solution to fill this gap is to create an opportunity for underrepresented students to participate in a multi-layered mentorship program. So, although a traditional mentor-mentee relationship has proven to be an effective best practice that enhances student success, but we believe that a multi-layered mentorship program has a lot more to offer to support the students. The layered mentorship program creates an interactive support system between proteges, mentors, lead mentors, graduate students, and faculty. The program is mostly student-designed and student-driven, and faculty oversees the program and interferes when it's needed. So the whole program is actually run by the students, for the students. This infographic further represents the mutually beneficial nature of a multi-layered mentorship program. We participate in several weekly meetings and we communicate regularly with each other on a daily basis. So it's not just the mentor and the protege that get to meet with each other. We are there to support. They have other students who are supporting them, who have gone through the experience at different levels. So the first layer is the mentor that has gone through the experience just a year before. So the immediate advice they can get from that layer, but that's not all they get. If they have some questions that a sophomore student cannot actually answer, then there are other support systems, including juniors and seniors in the program, graduate students, and eventually the faculty are always there to jump in, solve the problems. This also shows the relationship and the interactive relationship we have created, and in doing so, and in meetings, lots of meetings through the semester. To be exact, about 11 or 12 of those meetings on a weekly basis. We have a well-established data collection system that informs iterative design process and gives proteges greater agency in determining the discussion points. So actually in each week, when the protege comes to the meeting, they may come with a different challenge, a different question. We do not dictate the content of the meetings and the talks. It happens naturally and it grows naturally. Can we press this? This is a video of one of the students who has gone through both a protege experience and a mentor experience. Maybe Zach can help us. So this student graduated this past spring. Let me just tell you what he said. Okay. So the student has gone through the experience. One as a freshman, he joined the program in 2017, actually, where we didn't have NSF funding, we didn't have this developed mentorship program, but he was part of the learning community. And he talks about how that shaped, his future and understanding of being ready to be able to work in an environment that you'll be working with different people from different disciplines, with different values and everything. So that he received through being a mentee. And then once he became a mentor, he realized that his advice was valuable to the freshman students. And not only that, he gained some confidence in actually practicing to advise a student who is at a lower level than him, and that experience was really invaluable for him as well. He graduated and he has joined the workforce now. So to analyze the effectiveness of our program, we have looked at two measures of success: the retention rate and academic performance. For the sake of time, I'm just showing one slide of the results of the program. This slide shows the comparison of GPAs between students who participated in layered mentorship program versus students who did not participate in layered mentorship program. So we see that the difference is not that significant, but I want you to also realize that the sample size is so small and we are just at the beginning of this program. Hopefully, once we grow the program, then there will be a noticeable difference between the academic performance of these students as well. In addition to quantitative data analysis in terms of retention rate and GPA, we've also started to look at the qualitative data analysis in terms of the process of transition from mentor to mentee for our students. We have a PhD student who is right now working on this aspect of our project. As one of our second-year mentors said, in giving advice and leaving students, it leads to realize that your advice is worth giving. I learned that the advice I had was worthwhile to the mentee receiving it, and I became more confident in giving the advice. Some action items that we have put together in collaboration with my colleagues from School of Education, joining the LiveDex platform, as well as collaborating with the interested individuals, groups, faculty, programs, centers, to introduce the layered mentorship program to broader community of CU Denver, and not to confine it to our own program and our own students only. We want to combine principles of DEI with layered mentorship program to better serve minority groups, including women, BIPOC students, LGBTQ community, and NAPZ and other marginalized student groups. And our third action item, and the last one, is to create interrelated and overlapping support system to improve student success and retention. This could be through programs like the learning communities, the layered mentorship program, the bridge program, and etc. I thank you, and I welcome questions.
Thank you, Mary. Questions? As you're thinking about possible questions, I'll just note we have about 4 left, I think. There's a little bit of in and out at the end, which means we're going to go after 12. If you can hang around, please do. I think, we've been feeding our heads and our souls with this intellectual material, but if you need to feed your body, hopefully you got one of these vouchers for the very new and very exciting student center next door for lunch, where some of this conversation can continue. We can talk a little bit more about that. But any questions for Miriam's group at this point? Okay, great, thank you. And we'll move on to the next, which is, I'm proud to say, a team from SPA that's going to talk about an equity incubator. I know there's others as well as SPA. Anthony Stark and team.
Good, it's still morning. Good morning, everyone.
Looks like Zach's getting them back up. Okay, great.
All right, phenomenal. So, today, I'd like to talk to you all about the Social Equity Incubator. So the grand challenge that we are attempting to address through this work is achieving a just and equitable society. Social justice is the goal as identified by the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals which, if not addressed in the near future, have the potential of having generational effects globally for years to come. Social equity is the instrument by which we achieve this goal. And for CU Denver, this means combining our research and teaching with outward-facing service and deploying CU Denver's resources in response to community needs. So what is an equity incubator? It's a number of things. First and foremost, it is a clearinghouse and resource for all CU Denver researchers that creates public value, which we believe is essential to our reputation as Colorado's public urban research university and the nation's first equity-serving institution. Secondly, the equity incubator applies research skills to address internal and external inequities experienced here at CU Denver and in the Denver Metro Front Range region. And lastly, the equity incubator conducts program and policy evaluations to improve access, process, quality, and outcomes for our teaching, research, and service for all here at CU Denver. So who are we? We are a cadre of equity experts who provide training and support for research design, program evaluation, curriculum development, and more, with an emphasis on improving, again, access, process, quality, and outcomes of CU Denver's teaching, research, and service. Collectively to date, our experience includes a wide range of skill sets. I won't read them all, but essentially some of the key points are community engagement, measurement and evaluation, capacity building for nonprofits and communities, community-based participatory research. Today we've heard and had somewhat of an engaging, or at least the start of an engaging discussion about our research methodologies and the types of science that we use, expertise in Indigenous leadership, service learning, social emotional learning, strategic planning and change management, urban innovation, research methods, and the list goes on. So what do we do? Three things in particular include consulting activities, consulting on things such as research and curriculum design, and also conducting external program evaluations. Translational research, examples of these include equity scorecards and dashboards, community impact evaluations, policy briefs and white papers, and community presentations to engage multiple stakeholders. And lastly, training and development such as executive coaching, micro-credentials for emerging researchers and practitioners, as well as workshops, seminars, and in-service programs, all geared towards equity in our work. Why should CU Denver invest? For a number of reasons, really. First and foremost, it complements CU Denver's institutional identity as the nation's first equity-serving institution, as a Hispanic-serving institution, a minority-serving institution, and Colorado's public and urban research university, as well as Denver as a Denver anchor institution. As our colleague Wendy pointed out in one of our meetings, this is really a reinvestment in our own expertise that already exists here on our campus that has an eye towards equity and the types of work that we do. This is an opportunity to redefine our town and gown relationships. This morning, we talked about potential collaborations with organizations such as the City Center and the ways in which we can work with our community to, again, deploy the resources that we have in response to those community needs. And lastly, it promotes equity as a frame of mind and a field of practice, which we believe, again, is integral to becoming the nation's first equity-serving institution. Some supports early on in this process would include student research, or student researchers, logistical and administrative support, as well as course buyouts to really free up some of the time of these faculty researchers and others to conduct this research and consult and work with those who seek our services. Potential partnerships include municipal governments, for example, the Denver Office of Social Equity and Innovation, local nonprofits, peer institutions. Here we have it listed as an example. The Coalition of Urban and Metropolitan Universities has an anchor learning network where you have a number of different institutions across the nation that all serve as anchor institutions for their local economies. We also believe that throughout this process, the Equity Incubator will also begin to identify new peer institutions. As many of you know, the Carnegie classification identifies peer institutions based on like-minded characteristics. Well, as again, the nation's first equity-serving institution, this also means that we have to reconsider who our peer institutions are. And then also potential partnerships with, again, organizations here on campus like the City Center. Timetable and deliverables. So some early projects in the first year of the Equity Incubator could potentially include a front range social justice survey, which establishes feedback loops for co-producing equity knowledge alongside our external communities to be conducted throughout the academic year 2021, 2022. No, that's this year, 2022, 2023. With an anticipated delivery date on that report being spring, summer 2022, followed by a Denver Equity Action Workshop, which brings together government leaders, scholars, and community members to develop plans to remedy local and regional problems to take place in fall of 2023. I'd like to close with this quote from our very own Chancellor, which says that we are catalysts, partners to the people and communities we serve, strengthening our society and economy by building the talent and careers of tomorrow. And we believe that that is best accomplished through this unit, otherwise known as the Equity Incubator. So at this moment, I'd like to be joined by my colleagues, Mary Guy and Wendy Boyard, to answer any questions that you all may have. Thank you.
Well done. Questions? Yes. It's coming. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think this is a fantastic project, and it seems you guys did some progress already. That's amazing, very encouraging. I think the bigger picture is, what's the role of universities? What is that education? What is that giving them? Everything is in YouTube. So what we add to YouTube? So this is a big conversation, and I think what we do at CU Denver, we create the leaders of tomorrow. On November 30th, the president of a bank will be a guest speaker in my class. I asked him, Matt, how does school help you to be a president? So he could not answer this question. There is no class how to be a president of a bank. There is no class how to be a CEO of Uber. But what we do in a university is leadership. We build leaders. These people is going to be the governor, the banker, this and that. Therefore, we need to develop their critical thinking. And research, student research that you just mentioned, this is important. That will help with the critical thinking. That will help us to build the leaders for the future. And that will save a lot of problems for us. We'll fight literacy, we'll fight other things. So I have a comment, it's not a question. I just want to say that this is a fantastic project. Thank you.
No, thank you. I want to say that in response to that comment, I guess I have a love affair, and I'm sure my colleagues as well, with the civic mission of institutions of higher education. And we believe that this is the way forward as we look to the future and the role that these institutions play within our society.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, team. Next up is Farnoosh. I believe informatics. You've seen Farnoosh's name on a lot of other projects because he's really good with big data and
Actually, it's infrastructure informatics.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for staying late. Still morning. Good morning. My name is Farnoosh Panayikashani. I'm an associate professor of computer science. I have my co-presenter here, Elise Harrison, who's a civil engineering undergraduate student as well. If I can get the clipper, there you go. Wrong button. There you go. So our grand challenge is basically climate change, and particularly it impacts infrastructure and deteriorates our infrastructure. These are some reports from different parties here. We have a National Academy report recently published on infrastructure for climate change. This is how basically focusing on how this is affected. This is the second one. This is a McKinsey report published a couple of years ago, very detailed one, also elaborating on the same problem. And this is an NCA, National Climate Association report, elaborating on the same. So what is our problem then again? So our problem is the grand challenge is poor condition of civil infrastructures that we have that requires urgent sustainability plans. And also these are affected particularly by the climate change recently and exacerbated by that, as the evident from the infrastructure bill. That's been the problem. What are the opportunities? We have a lot of data being collected from all of these infrastructures mandated by federal government. Two, there's a promise of AI and data science in addressing that. So what's our offer then as a solution? Putting these two together, we are suggesting putting together a program, interdisciplinary program, research program at CU Denver focused on infrastructure informatics, which is broadly defined as AI data science for preventive, predictive, and prescriptive design, maintenance, and management of civil infrastructures. In short, infrastructure informatics is to civil infrastructures as bioinformatics is to life sciences. What is a team? Our team includes 24 faculty and students from 5 different schools and colleges, including expertise from civil engineering, computer science, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, math and statistics, environmental sciences, physics, chemistry, urban and regional planning, public policy analysis, and education. Our team is organized in 2 trusts, mapping to infrastructure and informatics, as you expect. This is an infrastructure team. If you look at the expertise bolded in the right, you see this basically covers many of the infrastructures we have in mind. We have environmental monitoring, buildings, power grid, transportation, and so on and so forth. While this is already a comprehensive list, we are looking forward to recruit existing and new faculty with expertise in this area, internally and externally. On the other side, we have the informatics trust, which basically is very much complementary. It happens to be very balanced in terms of size between these 2 trusts as well. Again, with complementary expertise, including machine learning, data science, big data, cloud computing, sensors, and so on and so forth. In this field, we feel we have a good set of expertise already included and covered. One major gap there is expertise in complex systems. We are working with a strong team at UIUC to bring them on board as well, because we want to also understand the interaction between different infrastructures rather than them in isolation. That being the team, over the last few weeks, 2-3 weeks, team has been quick to propose specific ideas about infrastructure informatics. As you see, this is distributed across the all type of informatics that we had in mind. We were planning to present some details, but then the time was cut in half. So we resort to focusing on one particular project that Elise and her advisor, Professor Kevin Renz, have put together. Please, Elise.
So like many cities, Denver has set a goal of 100% renewable electricity by 2030. Most of that will rely heavily on centralized large-scale solar and wind farms, but a diversity of source location will create a more reliable and resilient system. About 60% of downtown Denver is composed of structures. That means even if every rooftop had solar, about 40% of our city's available space would not be utilized. We plan to research the use of cable suspension solar arrays hung between buildings, utilizing the space above our city's streets, and also the possible secondary effects of reduction in heat island effect. Strategic placement of these systems will depend on optimization through informatics with computer science and structural analysis with civil engineering.
Thank you, Alice. So we just talked about that. Funding sources, because of the infrastructure bills recently signed into, this week actually, signed into a law, there's a lot of money coming to this field. I just was attending a presentation on water systems yesterday, $275 million over the next 5 years, only on water systems. So there's a lot of funding coming from government. With industry, we have partnerships developed. We are hoping to obtain their sponsorship as well as foundations. Here's a list of potential fundings from the government at federal, state, and local levels. But this is my, closing slide. Why now and why at CU Denver? This is a repeat from the previous presentation, but it is worth looking at it. So first, infrastructure bill is now a law and brings in a lot of funding in this area, particularly on research. There's existing funding that we can tap into on education that's supporting a good number of PhD students focusing on that topic. Research funding will complement that. There's this project is at the intersection of infrastructure and data science. Both of them are high reward research at this time. We have partnerships already developed with governmental sectors as well as industry. We have a large team that has interest and expertise to work on this. This is a good example of contemporary research, particularly convergence research. And also for all of these, most of these proposals there's a direct path to commercialization that we have interest in. Timeline, we are hoping by summer, if funded, by summer we start our pilot studies. And then in a couple of semesters, we believe we have enough mass generated to go after external funding. And a couple of years after that, again, good amount of mass of expertise in research to ask for establishment of a center at CU Denver. And a couple of years after that, going beyond perhaps CU Denver at that time, going on a CU system and beyond with external collaborators to have an institute or consortium. We believe both of these are possibilities, particularly with consortium. We can bring in membership funding to sustain this effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Questions, comments? Gita,
please.
In K through 12, there's a big push for STEM competencies for workforce. And so many of those topics come from the work that you're doing here. And I'm wondering if you have an education component built into this, or are you all just contemplating pure research part of the work?
Oh, definitely not. Actually, this particular research was motivated by availability of the funding on education side. As I mentioned, we have $750,000 funding to educate PhD students at that level. But certainly, if you notice, we have members from education departments that are willing to contribute as well. And I do agree with you. There's a big component on education side that goes hand to hand with this to make it a success. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Excellent job. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
We have, I think, 2 more presentations. Thanks for hanging in there. Gisela Bassani is going to talk about cross-cutting engagement and support.
All right, hi. So I am Gisela Bassani, and my colleague over there, Dr. Zipping-Walter. This is our first pitch, as our proposal crosses all of the grand challenges, and so we were asked to wait to pitch. So note that this is not as in-depth as your other presentations. So, Ubuntu, an African philosophy. In the Xhosa language, it's a South African language, it means the belief in the universal bond of sharing that connects all of humanity. So what's our problem? Well, our goal is to work across silos, right? But even with the same silo, hundreds of hours are used just to review the literature, to read every article that you found. I personally integrated 2 silos just in information systems, and I had to review over 7,000 papers with just 2 silos. So how do you combine research from dozens of disciplines and thousands of lines of research within those? Well, we are planning on doing research focused on investigating psychological, design, branding, legal, algorithmic, and other issues surrounding the creation, implementation, and deployment of a multidisciplinary research platform. So what does this platform look like? Well, it's kind of a solution paper repository, similar to other data repository, but with searchable results on solutions from all the studies. So you're going to be able to research all the questions that were asked, the outcomes of these questions, the hypothesis was rejected or not rejected, actual data uploads if possible, kind of like the medical field has. This is a platform that will facilitate cross-disciplinary collaboration. So I know some of you might be thinking, this already exists, but it doesn't. Because right now we have some disparate systems and most of them are not as fully fleshed out as they should be. So we have the INN, actually that was spearheaded in Boulder. We have Vivo, data repositories in general, and much more. Eventually, we want to include on our platform not just researchers, but also practitioners. So our user requirements and needs, right? So we have some associated research so that you don't think, well, this is just programming some platform. So user requirements and needs, we have some current pain points for different research silos. What are the research inefficiencies faced when working across silos? And how do you use social technological solutions to improve research efficiency across silos? So all silos can contribute to this. Number 2, defining integration and collaboration rules across silos. By the way, we talked about system design, right? System design. So defining integration and collaboration rules across silos, like what are your guiding principles in the platform? Like creating win-win scenarios or operating from a position of empathy, kindness, and solution building. What are the difficulties faced by teams working across silos? How do you facilitate better collaboration across silos? People from psychology, management, and public administration can certainly help with these. Interface design. What will the end user experience and how does it facilitate cross-silo research? What will allow for better interchange of ideas? And are there differences in the design, flow, and ease of use between research platforms and business platforms? People from arts and media, psychology, information systems, computer science, engineering, and marketing can certainly work on these research questions. How about the platform and design implementation? What algorithms are most applicable for a social media research platform? Platform implementation, software development, mathematics, engineering, computer science. And post-implementation, use and user satisfaction. Was the implementation a success? What can be modified to improve the success? Information systems, social sciences. And these are just some of the many people who might see themselves participating in this research. It's not limited to these aforementioned disciplines. In fact, I am hoping that every discipline finds a place in such a platform because we all really do study things slightly differently. So the research impact is to discover knowledge related to developing this cross-silo digital platform, to facilitate the connection of the national and international research community, which is an embodiment of the Ubuntu belief, and from what I just heard today, facilitating the building of democratic communities, right? We were talking about democratic communities, and this would facilitate that by providing the tools and a platform for that coordination. If you're interested, please join our group. We would love to have you.
Great. Thank
Any
you,
questions?
Thank you. Comments, questions about Gisella's presentation? Marty?
Thank you. I'm fascinated kind of by this, but I'm a little confused as well, which is not atypical for me. You talked about the user experience and some of this a couple times, and I'm curious. Can you say a little bit more about who do you anticipate the user being?
That's a great question. So there are a multifaceted platform, right? So the users will be researchers who actually do the research and are looking for information. For example, trying to tie multiple lines of research together? What kind of theoretical frameworks are out there without too much effort? Because there are tons of papers out there right now. So that's one. Number two is all practitioners in the future, where we will find a way to create a platform. And by the way, this would be all researchers internationally, right? But also then practitioners all over, where they can access a practitioner-oriented findings from what we do. I came from business, and I have to tell you, a lot of the research that has been done here, practitioners know nothing about. You are not very good at explaining things to the ordinary person who's running a business, for example. So it's a very vast, you'll be able to find other researchers on there, like Vivo can. You'll be able to look at what kind of research questions have already been answered and what kind of answers those gave, what kind of questions were asked in the survey, for example. So it's very comprehensive, and it's got to start small, right? So we'll start with researchers. And what kind of things do you guys want to see on a research platform? What would make your research better, easier, so that you're not doing work that 20 other people have done already?
Yeah, that's fascinating. The linguist in me says that one term, depending on the context, can have so many different meanings. Then I'm thinking culture, for example, which for a biologist or a geneticist may be applicable to that solution from which you extract whatever. And the rest of us social scientists see cultures differently.
Exactly.
And so in this kind of cross-disciplinary platform, what would be the mechanism for sorting the bits of meaning such that there isn't massive confusion out there?
Exactly. So that's basically a BI problem, which I have been doing for many, many years, where you have information from different information systems coming in and you got to standardize, right? You got to find a way to standardize these. So that's why we need other people in our team. That's why I'm calling for people from all over, because somebody maybe in theater is going to have a different comprehension, a different understanding of certain things than somebody in information systems, for example, or somebody in a variety of other fields. So we need to find some common conversation base, vocabulary, et cetera, to create this platform so that it can be ubiquitous, so that it can be utilized from everyone, everywhere, in such a way that we can take another leap in our research, right? Because we want to create this kind of leap to go across silos. And to do that, you're going to need to know that maybe my idea of what culture means is different than yours, right? Yes.
Do you contemplate doing any kind of semantic analysis based upon also the identity of the authors in terms of race, ethnicity, et cetera? Because so much of our scholarship has been white scholars writing about other white scholars, and that
exactly. So I'm from Italy. My mom's South African. My dad's Italian. I totally get that, right? I understand how you need to find, and that's why I want more people, right? If I just thought of this platform and said, well, I'm an IS person, I can just program it, it's one thing. But that's exactly it. We need somebody who understands semantics, somebody who, right, and wants to write research about it, because around all of this, there can be a lot of research, right? We don't want to end up becoming the next Facebook, right? So we want to make sure that everything is organized in such a way that scholastically, academically, it is done in such a way that we understand where the results might end up.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Great questions. Very exciting topic. Thank you. Good stuff. So if I understand right, we have one more presentation. We had some last minute changes from our friend Shay Swager from the library. So Shay's coming up. And then after that, I think we'll get some concluding remarks from our provost. And then people can get some lunch and move into the weekend. But again, thank you all for everything you've done so far. Shay.
Thank you very much. While I was listening to all of your amazing presentations today, I saw that Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted of all charges. I'm so mad. I'm so sad. In this presentation, we're going to talk about structural inequality. And I want you to think about Kyle Rittenhouse in this presentation and in every presentation today that deals with some form of social justice. Because people are dying and we're fucking it up. So JET or any other grand challenge we've talked about today is not going to solve structural inequality and white supremacy writ large or in our criminal justice system. But it will help chip away at the foundations of the things that support it. So I want to foreground that to provide a sense of urgency about what we're talking today. And that this isn't just academic or theoretical, that this really, really matters. Thank you. So the JET initiative stands for Justice, Inequity, and Technology. It also just sounds cool, so we're going to go with that. My name is Shay Swager. I work at the library. So I also have the opportunity of working with everyone on campus, which is a really unique and privileged position. But I do have a really fantastic team as the core team that worked on the presentation today. They're in the room. So we've got Kate, Troy, and Dennis. And in particular, we bring a skill set that is both interdisciplinary, particularly with STEM. We are very reflective and critical when it comes to education and pedagogy. And most importantly, we are trying to embed equity and social justice when it comes to theories, methodologies, and practices in higher education. So identify some problems. First problem, structural inequality. DEI in general has a habit of talking about things like racism and sexism as interpersonal, one person to another, but we need to talk about it in a structural sense. This is policies, practices, this is Kyle Rittenhouse, this is education, transportation, affordable housing or lack thereof, climate change, this is everything. Then the second problem is with technology, that we often talk about technology as neutral or objective, when in fact it reifies and amplifies existing social inequality. So when you put them together, we've got a serious problem. So the JET initiative is trying to figure out how do you uncouple and untangle and deactivate some of the most potent elements of that. So we want to dismantle structural inequality in tech through three things: research, teaching, and community. Let's break that down a little bit. So the first one is, no surprise, an interdisciplinary team that has background in STEM, technology, and equity. And I say this is cutting edge research because most of the time we're lacking one or the other. We can do STEM great, or we can do equity great, but we don't do them together very well. The second thing is we want to change how we do teaching and pedagogy. We've heard a little bit about this in some other presentations, but we need something that is trauma informed, that has compassion and care embedded into it, that is open. So you'll see things more like project-based learning or ungrading or open educational resources or open pedagogy that will qualitatively change the experiences in our classrooms. And lastly, we need to have community, and perhaps different than what you're thinking. Higher education has a lot of partnerships with maybe corporations and companies and defense, but sure, we can keep some of the good parts of that, but I also want to start partnering with other kinds of nonprofits and activists. Like, are we partnering with our local Black Lives Matter chapter? How many domestic violence shelters are we working with? Those are the kinds of partnerships I want to grow. So I think that we fit very well with 4 of the 5 strategic goals of the institution. So this is not out of left field. In terms of roadmap, we need to get, there's a lot of people on campus doing this kind of work. We need to get them already together, make sure that they are connected, engaged, and focused and on the same page. And then we need to hire a lot more people to come in and do some interdisciplinary work. So bringing in disability studies, bringing in women and gender studies with civil engineering, and get them all in the same room together on the same page. We need to look at our curriculum. We need to revamp some of what we've got already and create something new. Then we need to have a dedicated community manager and work with some of the other community outreach programs we have. Funding is going to be something we do both on grants and with partnerships with companies, and then institutional support. And then we need to be reflective and critical in how we're doing this and adjust as needed. Success looks like cutting edge research on tech, teaching, and equity. So we're going to publish all the things that we're doing that's incredible. We need a pedagogy that centers students and compassion. And then we need community partnerships that create a more just society. In terms of the kinds of questions that we're going to be asking, we will not be asking how to maximize the efficiency of supply chains for Amazon. We are going to be talking about how can we create a world that we want to live in, that we want our kids to live in, that doesn't do what today did. I'll leave you with a quote by Cornel West that says, "Justice is what love sounds like in public." We're a public urban research institution. And the best thing that I can think of us for to do is to manifest love through justice work. And I'd love to do that with you. So please contact me if this is interesting to you. And I'll take questions if you have any. Thanks.
Great. Shay, last but by far not least. So thank you so much for your passion and energy. Questions or comments? Provost.
It sounds like this was designed to be the concluding presentation. And well, thank you for just bringing everything around to the same circle where we started from, which is what are we about as a university? And I'm so happy to hear how it all just turned out. But let me, yeah, this is your moment. Any questions for him before
I don't see any at this point. But thank you so much. Great presentation. So yes, I think that's the end of our formal presentations. Marty laid out earlier kind of next steps next week and into December and actual research presentations, but I'd like to give the provost a minute or so if he wants to make some concluding comments.
Well, how do I get that out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stuck in there.
Well, let me just express my gratitude to everybody for what an amazing 2 sessions we've had. I think this is exactly as we all envisage that it should be. What's going forward, the work that still remains to be done, is a lot, right? Which is why we will be sharing guidelines for proposal development. And the point in the proposals is so that we are able to identify our first 2 or 3 focus areas to invest in as a university. Now, I'm happy I'm not going to be on the selection committee for any proposals, because whoever is going to serve in this capacity has a really, really difficult task. You heard the quality, and every one of these areas is compelling, right? Compelling. We have limited resources, but this is just our first year. And with the level of excitement and enthusiasm that has come through, I am so confident that we are at the right place. This is the right time. And we have the level of energy we need. We can go out there and find partners with our ability to persuade. We can find partners who have been waiting to get research partners like us so that we work together to further the interests that you've all expressed. Next year, we'll have another series of presentations and so on until we build this culture of research sharing, which we need, because we need to know who is working on what, how we plug in, and how we can be supportive. As a university, research university in downtown Denver, and the whole idea of an innovation district, which cannot take off without research, right? This is where we come in. This is where we come in. And the research that we're going to produce is what is going to inspire our learners to go out there and be the leaders that we know we need to be training. And so we are off to a very good start. I know the energy is going to continue. Let me put it this way. If you don't get picked this year, that's not a reflection of either lack of urgency for the area that you're working in, or lack of significance for us, or that the focus is not relevant. It's none of that. It simply is that we have limited resources. That's it. Keep your work going. Keep your discussions and team building going. Even without funding, you are going with that collaborative spirit, you will get funding just working together and supporting each other. That already is a win. But more importantly, as an institution, we have resources that we're going to be committing. Reach out to the Office of Research Support. We will build up the infrastructure to be supportive of the research that you do. And it doesn't necessarily have to be seed funding this year, but next year, the year after, and so on. So this is all to say, I am so impressed with where we are, and we will get there. And when we get there, you won't be asking any question, right? What does success look like? You will know, because our students will tell you why they are coming here. New colleagues will tell you why they want to join you. And it won't be that we're paying more money than anybody else. They will feel the excitement that's going on here. And that's why they will come. So thank you, everybody, for 3 more hours, 3 hours plus of your day, and continuing. Thank you. Don't forget that meal. You earned it.